Live stream audio test, 1, 2. Live stream audio test.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to this annual meeting of the Council on the 10th of May 2022. I'd like to welcome everyone to the face-to-face meeting of the Council in the new Council Chamber. There is an option to join the meeting via Microsoft Teams for those members and officers who are unable to attend in person. They will be able to partake in the debate remotely, but will not be in attendance formally, and members joining remotely will not be able to vote nor count towards the quorum of the meeting. We're streaming today's meeting live on the internet, and a recorded version will be available to view within 48 hours on the North Somerset Council website. So we'll move to the first item on the agenda, which is apologies for absence. Over to you, Solicitor, to report.
Chairman, I've received advance apologies from Councillors Cole, Goddard, Hearn and James.
Thank you. So we move then to item 2.
Excuse me, sorry, could I just say that Councillor Parker is coming, but he will be a little late, so he doesn't want apologies, but he will be coming.
Good. Right, we'll move then to item 2, election of the Chairman of the Council for the municipal year 2022-23. Could I have any nominations for Chairman of the Council, please? Councillor Petty.
I would like to nominate Councillor Karen Havison.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor... where are we? Yeah. So I've gone... Councillor Gibbons, I've gone name blind. Dreadful thing to happen. There you go.
Right. Yes,
It is, yeah. Two right.
So it's me, is it?
Seconding?
Yes, there's
Seconding.
a lot of people who wanted to second Karen, and I'm very proud to be the one that was chosen, and I'm delighted to second Karen to chair next year.
Right, so we'll go straight to a vote if nobody wants any debate. No, good. So to a vote then, please. All those in favour that Councillor Karen Havison is the chairman for the forthcoming municipal year. That's clearly carried. And I shall now stand, vacate the place. As you'll notice, the chain is on a nice little stand, so there's no need to pin it onto the new chair. So I will I'll bid farewell and be on my way.
Thank you, Richard. I'll wait until he sits down.
Excuse me, are we not having the chain put across your neck?
I will wear it at some other occasions.
It would be nice to see it because we respect it, you know, and it's a very prestigious
It's
place
Thank
that
you.
you're taking, if you don't mind.
Thank you all very much for your support and for entrusting me with this office. But of course, I believe, and I believe all of you, the whole council, wants to express our very particular thanks to my predecessor, Richard Westwood. We're all thanking Richard very, very much for steering us through the really difficult, unprecedented previous year, with lockdowns, online and hybrid meetings, and other huge challenges. I just hope that my own year is going to be a little bit more normal. I also hope you will indulge me if I use this opportunity for some quite personal notes as well as some more general observations. In comparison to many of you, I do not have the benefit of many years of experience in the role of councillor in North Somerset, and the normal functioning of this council seems still to be a bit of a novelty to me after the upheavals of the 2 previous years. But I am excited and confident that my background may allow me to see things maybe from a little fresh perspective, which can also be quite useful. I definitely found my background as a researcher in medical science quite useful in the previous 2 years. I also want to thank you all, and I really mean all, for the way this council has cooperated across parties and none. When the new administration was elected in 2019, we were all a bit doubtful that such a rainbow alliance could work and last. But I'm pleased and very proud that it has. And I feel that it could be an example for many others, other communities, councils, and maybe even governments. I was particularly pleased that all decisions and motions were passed unanimously at the last full council meeting, showing cooperation not just within the Rainbow Alliance, but across all parties. We are living in unprecedented times with not one but several massive changes to our way of life. The only way we can find a way through this is by cooperation, respect for each other, and often compromise. Locally, we often face occasions where a gain for one community may mean a loss for another. Let me give you an example from my own local ward, and I believe we'll hear a bit more about this during the public participation session. The Banwell bypass is a massive improvement for Banwell itself, but for some of the other downstream villages, it could mean an increase in traffic. So, do we fight our own corner and set village against village, or try and find a solution for the greatest overall common good? I'm sure you've all faced similar problems in your wards, and I know there are issues within North Somerset itself, especially with regards to the new local plan, just as there are similar issues across the UK, where one region, town or parish seems to be impacted more than another. You will not be surprised that the issue closest to my heart is how we try and fulfill our promise to North Somerset residents to deal with the climate emergency and become zero carbon by 2030. Declaring the climate emergency was passed by the previous administration and unanimously, highlighting quite how much we agree on identifying this frightening issue. The first time I attended a North Somerset Council meeting was during that debate, and I can still hear the applause and cheers when it was passed. It was very, very moving, actually. The Council itself has made considerable progress in this respect, but we know that similar progress across the whole of North Somerset will mean taking our residents with us. And we will only do this if we set an example of cooperation, communication, and often compromise. Therefore, my appeal to all of you, by all means, fight your own individual corners, but always, always bear in mind the overall common good and the interest of others, especially those in less privileged areas. Can I now ask our retiring chair to address the meeting? Over to you, Richard.
Thank you, Chairperson, for those kind words. In carrying out that role for the past year, I've sought to act so that a disinterested observer would not be able to judge which political persuasion I adhere to. And I do adhere strongly to my political persuasion. I hope I've managed to chair meetings with all due seriousness, but with a slight nod towards the late, great Humphrey Littleton, chairman of Radio 4's I'm sorry I haven't a clue.
My sincere thanks to the excellent support I've had from all the officers of North Somerset Council, and with particular reference to the top table team of Joe Walker and Nick Brain. And my very best wishes to Karen and I'll say Wendy for the year ahead. There you go. So thanks very much for putting up with me, all of you, and I'm back now where I should be, probably. Take care.
I'll get this right. My first job in this role is to ask for the nominations for the role of vice chairman or vice person or not vice lady. So can I have nominations for the position of vice chair, please? Mike Bell? Oh.
I'd like to nominate for Vice Chair of Council, Councillor Wendy Briggs.
Oh. And can I ask for seconders? Councillor Hogg? Can we go to the vote? Can I have a vote? All those in favour? Well, I believe that's unanimous as well. So that means that Councillor Griggs has been fully elected to the Vice Chairman. Can you address the meeting, please, Councillor Griggs? We're all flashing.
That's it.
Chairperson, yes, indeed, there are some flowers for Mrs. Westwood for her acting as consort for the past year, and I'll be happy to pass those over at the end of the meeting.
Item number 4, public participation, please. There's a total of 30 minutes for this item, and I believe each contribution has got a total of 5 minutes. So the first participant, I believe, is Miranda Pickersgill.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you all councillors for allowing me this opportunity to speak to you today. I'm a resident of Winscombe, and today I'm speaking for the Winscombe Traffic Action Group, WinTag. I'd like to talk about the impact of the Banwell bypass on the neighbouring villages of Winscombe, Sandford and Churchill, particularly the increase in traffic and what needs to be done about this. I hope you had a chance to read the letter which we sent out in advance. Apologies for the short notice. We believe the issues we're raising this evening are relevant to the whole of the authority, all of you, and not just our small part of North Somerset. Whilst there's great interest in the Banwell bypass, few people seem to have considered the effect of this project on our villages, nor have they considered the impact of other developments such as the new housing planned locally and on the eastern side of Weston-super-Mare. We don't disagree with the need to address Banwell's traffic problems or the need for new housing developments to have transport infrastructure. However, the action taken should be sustainable in terms of the climate emergency and finance. We should not be trying to solve one problem in a way that creates several others and harms surrounding communities in the process, and to echo what the Chair has just said, or that sets community against community. If you are familiar with our villages, you may know that some residents have been campaigning for many years for 20-mile-an-hour speed limits to deal with the volumes and speeds of traffic and the use of our country lanes as rat runs between the A38 and the A370. We know that this situation will be made considerably worse by the bypass. There will be more congestion in our village centres, increases in peak flow traffic of around 50% within the first year. There will be even more through traffic, including heavy goods vehicles, at the expense of the travel needs of local residents, of which I'm one. Through traffic discourages walking and cycling and prevents the development of viable community and public transport. The current plans for the bypass will have significant negative impacts on our communities unless there is a commitment to put in place adequate and effective mitigation for the short and long-term effects of the new road and housing developments. Residents of our villages and our parish councils have been working together and with your Banwell Bypass team for some time now to ensure that this is the case. A statement of common ground has been submitted by our parish councils to the bypass team in response to the recent consultation, and this statement you will have seen attached to our letter. It shows the strength of feelings in our communities about the scale of traffic problems facing our villages, the inadequacy of the current proposed mitigation, and the need to find the best solution for both our parishes. In a nutshell, the level and geographical extent of the measures that your bypass team are proposing are inadequate. There are some stretches of road with 20 mile an hour, lots of roads without. There is very limited traffic calming. There are no speed limit enforcement measures like speed cameras. There are a few pedestrian crossings. I'm afraid to say these proposals are not acceptable to the residents of our villages. They are based on predictions of traffic solely for the first year of the bypass opening, 2024. Yet our studies of other bypass schemes have revealed sharp increases in traffic in the 5, 10, 15 years after completion. We've requested traffic modelling data for such projections, but access to this information has been denied. We believe that plans for mitigation should be based on a worst-case scenario for the impact of the bypass and of the vehicles generated, for example, by the 7,800 houses planned, as shown in the local plan, for Wolvers Hill Village. These are homes that are designed to be served by the transport infrastructure between 2024 and 2039. Some of the experts that we've been working with are saying that with the expected volumes of traffic, no amount of mitigation in our local area will be sufficient, that it's the act of building the bypass that's the problem because that will generate the traffic. That what is needed is a scheme for managing traffic flows across the whole of the area between and including the A370, the M5 and the A38. And with this, we would agree the need for overall traffic management scheme in a much larger area than just our 4 villages. I would like to conclude with 2 questions. If the bypass goes ahead, how are you going to ensure that traffic mitigation in our villages is in place, first of all, for when the bypass opens, and secondly, that it is adequate and effective in the long term? My second question is, how will you manage the overall flow of traffic between the A370, M5 and 38 to ensure that any mitigation scheme is not overwhelmed in the years to come by the increases in traffic? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Miranda, for this long and thoughtful presentation. I believe all councillors have already got a copy of your statement, and I will make sure it goes to the appropriate officers and members or executive members. So thank you very much. I believe the next contribution is on the same topic, but this time coming from the other village of Churchill. And it's David Johnson who's going to present this. Thank you, David.
Good evening, councillors. Thank you for this opportunity to address you. My name is David Johnson. I am a parish councillor and also a representative of Churchill and Langford Residents Action Group. I've come to speak to you about the costs of the Banwell bypass in terms of the environment, of finance, and to the future climate. Firstly, there are substantial financial costs, with the expected estimate to be received from the Housing Infrastructure Fund for the bypass itself being 55 million, rising to 66 to include the wider improvements. The selected route, however, is now, it shows significant obstacles in terms of road junctions, flood-prone areas, a 7-metre high bridge required at Riverside, steep gradients with the Southern Link. Independent experts estimate the original budget needs to be enhanced by between 30 and 75% in order to meet these new design specifications, together with the wider improvements. North Somerset has confirmed that they will cover the overspend, so we ask, how will this be funded? Community Infrastructure Levy, or SIL funds, are already being earmarked for this, but at least in the short to medium term, it's unlikely to be adequate. Hence we ask, will the costs be payable by all communities and all taxpayers in the area as far afield as Portishead, or will services be cut? We were alarmed in the recent consultations to learn that mitigation for our villages appears to be only a very small proportion of the budget, perhaps less than 3%. These allocations are also variable in importance, and they could be susceptible to the inevitable budget cuts if there are overspends. Can we be assured that traffic mitigation in our villages will not be cut? North Somerset's commitment to the environment is of major importance, and we understand that the bypass will not go ahead without the Southern Link Road. But this is to be built through the Mendip AONB, across special areas of conservation, particularly for those rare species of bats, and through important groundwater sources for drinking water. The Southern Link Road is controversial in terms of the damage to the landscape and wildlife, and our engineers report it's going to be extremely costly to build. So what will happen to the integrity of the project if the Southern Link Road is sacrificed due to costs? But in turn, if it's built, how much damage will be done? North Somerset Council has declared a climate change and nature emergency that the Chair referred to earlier, and yet the Council is now proposing to build a substantial new road. Transport already contributes more than 40% of North Somerset's carbon emissions, and with this new road, will we go backwards in the struggle to achieving net zero? We're yet to be told the official carbon cost of the Banwell bypass, but the projected carbon cost of building the new road is now estimated at 64,000 tonnes of embodied carbon. To this, there will be the additional CO2 emissions from increased traffic, which might amount to 7,500 tonnes of CO2 per year by 2039. The planned mitigation measures are unlikely to make more than a small dent in this overall increase in carbon emissions from the bypass. And there is discord here between the Council's admirable intentions in the draft local plan for sustainable housing together with sustainable transport going hand in hand with the Wolves Hill developments, and the more immediate plans that are in place to invest in a new bypass road that goes in the opposite direction, both strategically and geographically. We were all again warned on the eve of the recent COP27 in Glasgow that what we do now and in the next few years will profoundly affect life on Earth for the next few thousand years. We believe this and suggest that the carbon cost of the projects, such as the road, should trump all other considerations in the choices for the future. In this respect, the Rainbow Coalition must set a good example. Today, the cost-benefit analysis of the project made public, no impact studies on the wider environmental landscape, no impact studies in neighbouring villages, and therefore it's time to pause until we have sufficient information to decide whether this 6 million or more will be a good investment from North Somerset. Thank you for your time, and we hope there's an opportunity to work with your new leadership towards the balanced outcome for our villages. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your contribution. Have the councillors had a copy of your submission?
Yes, the letter you received today was jointly with the previous speaker.
Okay.
And we're working together with the parish councils.
Okay, thank you very much. Again, I will make sure that your contribution gets noted by the appropriate officers and executive members. I believe we have a third contribution, again on quite a similar issue, problem, and it is, this time it is Amanda Barrett who is going to speak to us.
Hello. So, some of what I'm going to say is very similar. Amanda Barrett, speaking on behalf of Save Your Greenbelt and from Long Ashton. I've lived in Long Ashton for 20 years and spent 30 years or so in remote wilderness areas making BBC wildlife documentaries at Bristol's very own Natural History Unit. In the 20 or so years since work first began on the planning development in Ashton Vale and Woodspring Golf Course, I know the world around us has changed fundamentally. It is still changing and fast. The efforts to limit global heating to within 1.5 degrees centigrade may be broken in the next 5 years. As a result, the impact of climate change and biodiversity loss in 15 years, the length of this local plan, is unimaginable. North Somerset Council has recognised this on paper by declaring a climate and ecological emergency, but Taylor Wimpey's plans have remained fundamentally unchanged. However, we all know business simply can't go on as usual. In Europe, our world is currently 1.1 degrees warmer, and temperatures are set to rise higher than the global mean. So, extreme events like the Greek fires and the German floods will increase. Record heat waves, droughts, and demand for water will increase. Systematic crop failures and food shortages will increase. Damage to people, infrastructure, energy, public health, and the economy will increase. Social inequality and global conflicts will increase. Damage to ecosystems will increase, and that in particular matters because one of the quickest and cheapest ways to mitigate climate change is to maintain existing healthy ecosystems that soak up carbon. The second is the restoration, expansion, and connection of protected areas for nature. Therefore, climate change and biodiversity loss are twin crises that should be tackled together. But in this country, our work is cut out. We are the most nature-depleted country in the G7 and one of the worst in the whole world. The failure to value nature in decision-making processes has facilitated people's ability to continuously degrade nature with impunity. Woodspring Golf Course and the surrounding area is private land, but what does it offer us all right now? Keeping the twin crises of climate change and biodiversity loss in mind, soils and water matter. The golf course and most of the surrounding land hasn't been ploughed. so that means its soil soaks up carbon. Soils store 3 to 5 times as much carbon compared to vegetation. More carbon is stored in clay-rich soils like wood springs than those in sandy areas. Wood spring has lots of water, including small, well-vegetated ponds and lakes. All these have a higher carbon capture rate as some woodlands. Taylor Wimpey wants to build and develop over 1,000 acres of greenbelt land in this area. It will completely destroy soils and healthy habitats. It's no good building houses, even affordable houses, if there's no planet left to live on. Do we even need this development? From discussions within government, our local MP and planning professionals, it appears that the previous Conservative government approach to planning is dead. Michael Gove has been asked to develop a different approach that was announced today in the Queen's speech. This approach is likely to contain stronger influence from local communities, a revision downwards of the housing demand numbers, and a strengthening of the traditional Conservative policy of preserving the green belt. We all need to be acutely aware of these changes. There are around 11,000 permissions for housing in North Somerset not taken up by the applicants. The house building rate over the past 15 years has been around 900 houses per year, creating adequate housing supply for most of the local plan period. So why come up with a strategic development site on truly precious greenbelt land? As our area recovers from the impacts of decades of landfill, with the joyful sight of kestrels, skylarks and barn owls returning, surely this site should be enhanced to expand the opportunities for a truly world-class solution to the twin threats that underpin all life on Earth. Finally, to emphasize why access to high-quality green space matters to me so very much, I want to share my story. My father was murdered when I was very young, and as I sought to stabilize my life, I found salvation in the landscape where I grew up, the Itchen Valley in Hampshire. I was lucky. It's now wiped out by the M3. I still remember, though, how lucky I was to have those footpaths, the wildlife, and that world when I needed them most. Without those, I don't think I'd have had a career. I don't think I'd have paid my taxes. And besides much else, I don't think I'd have made the journey today in front of you all, way out of my comfort zone, but determined to have my say, since everyone in South Bristol, Long Ashton, Dundry, Barrow Gurney deserves the same things that saved me all those years ago. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Amanda, for this very thought-provoking and moving statement. And I'm sure we're all fully aware that what you're saying cannot be ignored. But all I can say is I will make sure your comments are moved to the right addresses. Thank you very much. And I believe we have one final contribution, from this time on a different subject, and this is Mr. Colin Barker.
Good evening, councillors. Thanks very much for letting me have the time to speak to you. My name is Colin Barker. I live in the village of Hewish, which is in the parish of Puxton. I'd like to talk to you about codes of conduct, which is a very live subject, as you're all aware, with what the goings-on in Whitehall. I wish to tell you about incidents where the codes of conduct of ward councillors, council officers, and a parish clerk have been broken on multiple occasions, for which I have the evidence here in my yellow folder. I hope a responsible council will investigate these matters, the evidence from myself, consider it and act upon it. In February 2018, I received an email from the clerk to Puxton Parish Council. The email was defamatory, rude, and broke data protection rules. On the latter matter, I made a complaint to the Information Commissioner's Office. The ICO made a ruling on this matter. They concluded that the clerk had indeed made a data breach when he circulated my data to individuals not connected with the organisation I used to run. And he was warned about his future conduct. Before that ruling, the clerk, who was a member of another organisation I was once connected with, then decided to raise my name from historical records of that organisation. Another complaint was made to the ICO. In this instance, the ICO believed his excuse that he was IT illiterate in removing my name. This is all background information. Most significant part of this, however, is the statement that the clerk made in the email. He stated that he had been contacted as a clerk many times about myself and how I was running the organisation. The clerk became clerk to Puxton Parish Council in February 2016. The many incidents he referred to, which was actually one, happened in 2013. That is fully 3 years before he became clerk. Therefore, he is not telling the truth. He has been asked many times to provide the evidence of the contact.
Chairman, I hate to interrupt a public speaker, but I should remind Chamber that public participation is not to be used to target individuals. I think most of this speech so far has been being used to target a parish clerk. I would suggest that Mr. Barker confine his remarks to the process rather than directing remarks against individuals.
Thank you, Chair. On that basis, then, therefore, I would like to understand how, when I challenge the codes of conduct of these councillors, that the process that they have in place in their statutes is not followed. I've demonstrated this to North Somerset Council, and they have basically not accepted a black and white evidence on the matter. I would like this to be investigated by an independent body, and that be reported back to me. I don't think I've basically mentioned who the names of these people are. It's their actual titles. So, what has happened in these cases, as I've mentioned already, changing of historical records, holding lockdown meetings during the first lockdown in clear breach of the laws of the land at the time, stating in meetings that they've had verification to hold meetings from the ALCA, transferring personal data from their records to individuals who then contact me from their personal email addresses, failure to register interest in a limited company in the parish as directed in the Code of Conduct, excluding parishioners from parish council meetings on Zoom when I challenged them in that forum, threatening behaviour, including verbal and physical threats from those councillors, which has been registered with the police, ignoring applications to become a councillor of that parish, stating that I'm vexatious in my complaints, lying in council minutes, which is, can be proven, stating that they're members of a council subcommittee when they are not, incorrect recording of minutes with personal bias and defamatory statements, making statements regarding police intervention, which have been proven to be untrue in subject access requests with the police. I think that basically gives you a flavour of what I'm talking about. I will leave this statement for the council to consider, and I would hope that they would look at it and get all the information I can provide. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Barker, for raising this.
Can I leave this with yourself? Thank you for your time.
We will look into it. Thank you.
Chairman, I think I should respond on behalf of the clerk, of myself as monitoring officer and the deputy monitoring officer. There have been a number of standards complaints from Mr. Barker. They have all been investigated. Mr. Barker has been given the responses. He has also been told what his routes of complaint are beyond the council, myself and the deputy monitoring officer, i.e. the local government ombudsman or judicial review. So just to make clear to people, he has already had his items investigated. He has also been told the routes of appeal.
Maybe we can draw this to a close now then. Can we go on to item number 5, petitions to be presented by members according to Standing Order number 16. I believe there were none by 12 o'clock. Have we had any in the meantime? So there are none. Okay. Are there any declarations of disclosable pecuniary interest? None, I believe. And now I believe we've got the minutes from the previous meeting for approval, and I believe our leader is going to move these for approval. Where is he? There.
Yes, I look for somebody to second that and approve them. Thank you.
Whoops, I believe Councillor Cunniford is seconding it. So can we go to the vote? All those in favour? One abstention, I believe.
I wasn't at the last meeting, so.
Okay. No abstentions then. I don't think that counts as abstention. I believe there are some, go to item number 8, and there is a motion by a member, and I believe the motion is given by Councillor Charles. Over to you, Councillor Charles.
Thank you very much, and congratulations, Chair. I have worked in community engagement and tenant involvement for 25 years, and part of my role is to work on creating good groups of people that work together for the benefit of the community. That involves creating rules and ways of working that creates mutual respect for all. And in my 25 years of working for different organisations, managing volunteers, managing staff, the laxest rules, the ones that are very vague, are actually those that affect councillors and how they treat each other. We have to set ourselves to a higher standard, and we do. We have protections against abuse from the public which are rigid, and that is a good thing. What I wish for, though, is to have standards that protect the working environment we have. I find it quite apt that, thankfully, this motion was carried on from the last council meeting, that we're actually putting this motion forward in Mental Health Awareness Week. I myself, and I've got to say this motion does not reflect about 99.9% of the people in this room. But I have had myself incidences where I have been victimised, and to the extent that I suffered a panic attack. I am an acute anxiety sufferer. The panic attack can actually render someone incapable for a period of time. I was bullied to an extent that 2 councillors actually immediately rang me up afterwards to ask if I was okay. And that is not acceptable. The government recently responded to a report on increased measures for councillors who intimidate other councillors, and did not uphold those recommendations, but suggested that local authorities could look to their existing standards themselves and to actually beef those up. And this is what I'm asking for in this motion. I'm asking to have the monitoring officer look at the local government standards. I am looking for the local government, the monitoring officer, to work with councillors in actually having the most refined and the most proactive standards possible that don't just look at the extremes of bullying and intimidation, but look at the things that are not evident, not physical intimidation, not deflammatory, but the use of power and positions to actually feel or belittle the individual. I'm not asking to change in significant ways the standards we have, but to strengthen them and modify them, and to back that up with adequate training as well, so that committee chairs and senior councillors can identify bullying and intimidation when it happens and can take appropriate action within a much harsher set of standards that enable to protect individual councillors and ensure they have a safe working environment. I won't be here next year. Some of you might be very grateful of that fact, but I won't be here next year to see that in action. But I would love for new councillors and old elected for the new term to have a safe and protected environment where everybody's voice is considered. I urge you to support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Charles. Is there a seconder for this motion? Yes, Councillor Cartman. Thank you. Is there support for a debate on this? I believe I need to see 7 hands to go to a debate. Clearly more than 7, so can we have a debate, please? I believe Councillor Harley was first with her hand up.
Yes, thank you. It's a subject very close to my heart. I think you're absolutely right, and I think you're being very honest at what you suffered. I can tell you, in my opinion anyway, I think we live in a very horrible world at the moment. We are living in an area where we're getting very personal with our remarks. We should actually stand back, and before you open your mouth, you stand back and think what you're going to say. I'm finding it in this chamber, and believe you, Councillor Caritas, we suffered the same problems that you're suffering in the previous administration. And it wasn't pleasant. And there's some of them in this room here today that were part of it. So I'm just saying to you that we've all need to take a check of this. And one thing, whilst we're looking at it, we've also got to realise it not only affects us, it affects our partners, it affects everybody. Some of us may have partners that are very ill, and I think that we have to understand that. We have to understand exactly how we all live. We also have to understand that we all have different views, and they should be respected. I respect other people's views, but I don't want them rushed down my throat. Thank you very much. And I think we have to do that. And before we do that and go for this motion, we've got to understand and respect our other person's view. And when I'm also going to say, and if that's all right with you, that we could include in this, I would like to see, starting from respect here, starting respect for the position of being a chairman of council. I think that we had set in the past which gave us a structure, which gave an example to those outside, the young people and everybody else that comes into the chamber, that that position is extremely honourable to behold. And those of us that have done it respect it. And in that way, every council meeting that we hold, we should stand up and ask a question. We should ask the question and stand up. When you want to respond, you stand up. And that's the only time you do it, is at a full council meeting. Those of us who've been here for a long time respect that. And we should really, really respect it. So if you would take that on board as well, Councillor Charles, I would be very obliged. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Harley.
I fully respect the... Oh, sorry, let me stand just out of respect for you. I fully respect the councillor's position on that and what it means to her, but I also respect that Councillor Havison takes a stand on what she believes as well. I would encourage a debate on an amendment on it, but I think it's two very separate subjects. So I respect your opinion, but I think it's two very different issues, so I wouldn't want it in the substantive. Thank you.
And I believe I will actually touch on this later on anyway. it is on my agenda. So can we go on to the next contribution from, I believe, Councillor Pilgrim? Councillor Willis is, I believe, oh, sorry, I saw the wrong hand. Sorry, Councillor Willis.
Yes, thank you. I've got two arms and they're quite long, but they obviously didn't hold them up enough. So thank you and congratulations, Madam Chairman. I may be out of order in calling you that, but that's where I'm coming from, so I don't know what else to call you at the moment. So no disrespect, but my respect is Madam Chairman. So in my very first council meeting in this chamber, some whatever years ago, I spoke, my maiden speech was on good manners and respect. And I wasn't going to speak, but I remember being pushed out of my chair by a councillor who's no longer with us. He's passed away. And at that time, he wasn't the same party that I stood for. And he pushed me out of my seat and said, "You speak." And I'm glad I did, because it's something that I speak about every time. Good manners and respect is what I was taught by my family, by my mother and my father and my grandparents. And I go through my life with good manners and respect for others. I respect others' religions, cultures, gender, faith, colour, whatever. I respect whom they are and what they are. I find it very difficult. Could I just have the floor a moment, please, Councillor Clayton? Thank you. It is part of... Thank you. The idea is when you're stood that you speak. Thank you. So I actually feel very strongly about good manners and respect. I have suffered, like others, from bullying from others, not from my own party at all, but I have suffered. I have been shouted at many, many times in this chamber, both in council meetings and in scrutiny panel meetings. And anyone that knows me well will know that if you shout at me, I will shut down and I won't listen to you. And I will sit quietly until you shut up, and then I will answer. So shouting at me doesn't work, and I'm sure there are others who feel the same. So I fully support this for respect and good manners, even if for no other reason. And I think it is quite right in this age that people aren't bullied. If you have a different opinion, it doesn't mean to say I am right or you are wrong, or the other way around. It means I have an opinion and I have a brain and an intellect that I can speak of, and I don't wish to be shouted down because it's not how you wish me to speak. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Councillor Willis. I don't think anybody disagrees with you. And another contribution from Councillor Petty, please.
Thank you very much, Councillor Charles, for bringing this motion. I completely agree that looking at the advice from the review to understand the standards of public life is very worth reviewing. I completely agree with other people's sentiments that it is a very challenging time to be involved in politics, and whether it's from within or from outside, there is toxic attitudes, language flying around. I don't know what has created this heat that is it resulting in that kind of lack of respect that is being seen across the board. You know, obviously, we have all stood up to try to play our part in public life and deliver something back to our communities, and for that we do all deserve respect. I really appreciate what you have recommended here, that reviewing of that document to see how we can go about adopting it. And likewise, I'm fully supportive of the idea of creating a group of councillors, and I would like to offer to participate in that group should that be a good opportunity. I think that transparency and clarity of process is really, really important when you start a new job and when you join a new organisation. And I think that what we're proposing here is to help people who are councillors, people who are new councillors, to understand the process with which they could go through if a situation arises. And for me, the only way we will address our inclusion issues and really welcome diversity into this room, which right now I don't think we have enough diversity in this room. We have diversity in North Somerset, but right now, looking at all of our faces, it is not reflected in this room. And we will only get that when we create an inclusive space. And right now, if somebody has a problem, it is not transparent and clear what to do, what will happen, how it might be resolved. And I hope that the part of what this motion is aiming to deliver is when something goes wrong and something you hadn't expected to happen happens, you have a clear route with which to raise an issue and to see a form of justice and a form of reconciliation around a situation. And I'm not saying I know what the right action is for all of those occasions, but the best thing in any workplace where I've worked is at least knowing where to find help and some support and some answers. And I hope that this motion is in part trying to achieve that, and that is why I wholeheartedly support it. I will just say that has nothing to do with standing up or sitting down, but it does have to do with respecting other people. I will sit down so that everybody can hear me through the microphone clearly, and that is part of being an inclusive society. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Petty. And I believe we have one more contribution from Councillor Gibbons.
Thank you. Yes, I think I'll sit down as well, because the reason I don't stand up, Councillor Willis, is because they have to sort of bend over to get to the... oh, no. Sorry. Yes, Councillor Harley, yeah. I find it hard to bend over and get to the microphone, so I will sit, but it's no disrespect. Yes, as Councillor Petty said, I do support this motion. I think it's important that we do recognise that we have to behave in a way that shows our respect for each other. We can disagree. We don't ever have to be unpleasant or abusive in any way. We have, as councillors, quite a lot of, I would say, stress, because with social media, all of us have put our heads above the parapet, and we get abuse from faceless members of the public out there who can do that on Facebook. That's a stress we have to deal with, and we might need support to deal with that. We certainly don't need the additional stress of feeling that our colleagues in this room add to that. And I feel it a little bit like when I brought the anti-racism motion last council, that it's very sad that we even need to bring a motion like this, that we have to discuss these issues and we have to think about bringing in rules and procedures to help each other to avoid this kind of stress. And certainly one point that Councillor Charles makes about training for councillors, I think, is well made, because I don't think any of us, when we're first elected, quite realise what it entails and how difficult it can be. And many years ago, in 2011, when I was first elected, we had a group, and colleagues from the opposition were then in the administration. I think you'd remember Councillor Knight and others of us sat in a working group where we tried to formulate a new way of educating councillors when they came into the role and supporting them to deal with exactly these kind of things. So I think what Councillor Charles proposes is kind of picking up that work, and I welcome it, and I welcome enhanced training for councillors so that in the next administration people feel much stronger and much more able to deal with the pressures and the pleasures and excitement of this role, because we all do it because we want to help people and we want to make our communities better. If we're criticised, let's make sure that it's in the right way and in a respectful manner. Thanks.
Well said. Oh, Councillor Shopland, I believe, wants to say something too.
Had to start early without me, but never mind about that. Listening to what I've just heard, I do wonder how I've survived as a councillor. And I accept that new councillors have to learn procedures. They have to learn how the council works. But I am totally opposed to a trained councillor. That is a robot. They are governed by someone and told what to do according to their training. We are here as individuals to represent the people who elected us, not to perform like monkeys on a stage. No, ma'am, I'm totally against training. You can ask for advice, that is different. But to sit down with a lot of councillors and train them, we've had this with P&R. Only the selected few now can judge on a plan. My God, do they know how to dig a foundation? I doubt it. No, ma'am, training is out.
Did you want to come back, Councillor Charles? I saw your hand.
Only to say that is, of course, Councillor Shopland's opinion, but from my experience, nobody is ever too old or too young to learn something new. I've trained people, and I've been trained in standards. I've trained 17-year-old homeless people. I've trained people in their 80s that live in sheltered accommodation. They've all benefited from it. They've all felt that they've learned something new. It's never too much to teach an old dog new tricks, but I'm not implying anything. And you know, I think it's worthwhile. I support that.
Thank you very much. I hope I'm not too old to learn new tricks. Can we have a vote then? Can we proceed to a vote? All those in favour? Anyone against? One against. Any abstentions? 2 abstentions, I think. Yeah. Carried. Okay. So we go on to item number 9. Matters referred from previous meetings, nothing. And now we go to the chairman's announcement, which is, I believe, me. So it's quite relevant in the current debate, I believe. First of all, just some practical announcements now, rather than my other more personal statements. I would quite like to be called chairperson, because I'm neither a chair nor a man. So if you, and so if we could, thank you. So if we could talk about chairperson, that would be nice. But with the issue of standing up during addressing the council, I have to make a confession. I am quite often struggling to hear you clearly. I am finding it much more difficult to hear somebody when their mouth is a long way from the microphone. And for that totally practical reason, nothing to do with respect, because I believe you can show respect sitting down or standing up, you can shout at somebody standing up, you can hit somebody standing up, you can be very polite standing down. So I am asking you to please speak into the microphone. If you can do that standing up and you want to stand up, please stand up. But if you find it much more challenging, and I'm thinking especially of some taller people than me, which I believe are most of you, because I'm a bit of a shorty, and I'm with particular sympathy to our leader, who finds it very challenging to bend down from his great height. I'm asking you to please speak into the microphone and speak clearly so that I can clearly understand what you're saying. So that's just a practical appeal. And to end on a note which I hope will meet with all your approval, and that is, after 2 years of lockdown and online meetings, it's been quite difficult to get to know each other face to face. So I'm going to try and reinstate a social gathering after each full council meeting, starting with the next one. The dreaded virus meant that we had to ditch this tradition, and I really, really hope that it will not do the same again later this year. Thank you. I believe the next item is our leader's announcement.
Thank you, Chairperson, and I'm more than happy to concur with your idea about sitting down. It's one of the most uncomfortable experiences in this council, having to bend over a microphone to try and speak. So I think I very much appreciate your comments, for those that are slightly higher than the others. So finish the practical comments. First of all, I'd like to say a thank you to all my colleagues in this room for their help over the last 3 years, to the officers of North Somerset Council and our contractors, who I think have done they always do a brilliant job, and what they've done during the pandemic, I think, has been absolutely amazing. And thank you. I'm sure that we'll all join together in saying that. And thirdly, I'd like to thank the residents of North Somerset. And again, the pandemic showed this community at its very best when we came forward to support each other in a time of great need for very many. And indeed, that's continued forward, I think, in some of the massive challenges people have faced, particularly around the cost of living crisis. So thank you to the people of North Somerset, and please continue to do so. I'm speaking in the past tense because I will be not putting my name forward to be the leader of the council for this municipal year. So I'll have to ask you, Chairperson, to arrange the selection of a new leader. I will be silent for now. So thank you very much and good luck.
Thank you very, very much, Councillor Davies. I believe I speak for all of you when we want to say that we're sad to see you go. We understand that you may feel like a rest after many years of hard work, and especially the last 3 years. It cannot have been easy. It must have been a really, really hard task to lead us through all of these upheavals in the last 2 or 3 years. So, absolutely, thank you very much from me, and I believe some others want to express their personal thanks to you as well. I believe Councillor Bell would like to do that.
Thank you, Chairperson. I will stand up, if only because it keeps the cameraman on his toes in terms of getting the right angles. If you can try and get my best side. Some people say it's the back, but I don't know. And talking of seeing the back of people, I just want to say, thank you, Don. You've been, like all leaders, I think you've been annoying and irritating and difficult, but also really good to work with. And I hope that over the last 3 years, but before that as well, as leader of the independent group, that we've had a really good working relationship. We've shared the highs and lows over that period. None of us, of course, anticipated that we'd be spending the best part of 2 years in a global pandemic and all of the challenges that presented to the council and the community. But I just wanted to pay personal tribute, and on behalf of the Liberal Democrat group, to thank you for your leadership in that period, for your hard work, and we look forward to many, many more contributions from you over the next year. Just don't be too much of a backseat driver, eh?
I love that last remark. Councillor Petty, I believe you'd like to say something too.
Yes, thank you. I don't think that in 2019, when we stood to be elected, many of us expected the results that we got overnight in a change across North Somerset, the level of change that we saw across North Somerset. And recently somebody asked me about, we have done 3 years. We are 3 years in to our 4 years as a Rainbow administration. And someone asked me recently, how important was who you had as a leader in the leader of the independents, and how important was Don to that process? And he was really important, and I want to thank him for that. And I think that the community of North Somerset know that, and I think that it's been an extremely difficult couple of years. COVID has challenged so many of us, and nobody had had the right training for that. But together, we have been showing the residents of North Somerset, but we have been showing the West Country that you can do politics differently. We have been showing them that independents, Lib Dems, Labour and Green working together, respecting each other, listening to each other, through good leadership, through respect and collaboration, have managed to be, I think, holding the fort and running it well. So I'd like to thank Dan, I've forgotten his name, it's too late. I'd like to thank Don personally for all his effort and his time that he's given, and I'm still looking forward to the next year ahead. But I do believe that it's important that we've been doing politics differently, and I respect all the different parties who have come together and those non-in parties who have been working together to make that happen. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Petty and Councillor Gibbons.
Yes, well, I'd like to thank Don as well for his leadership from personally and on behalf of the Labour group. As Councillor Petty has said, I think that thinking about what Councillor Charles was saying, I think that we kind of exemplify how you can have different political backgrounds, to an extent, different beliefs, and yet work together with goodwill and politeness and respect for each other's views. And, you know, it must have been incredibly tough for Don with all the extra responsibilities he had when we plunged into this kind of strange world in the lockdowns. I mean, the number of online meetings we were having each week, it was stressful for us, but I know, Don, you had a lot more on your plate than individual exec members did, or even other elected members. So I just take my hat off to you and thank you for leading us so well. I personally thank you for your passion and commitment, particularly to the young people and children of North Somerset. I know from when we were first elected back in 2011, that was a particular passion of yours, and you've always fought for that. So I've welcomed your support, particularly in that area, and I'm sure that that will go on in whatever way you choose to participate in the council going forward. So yes, thanks once again for everything you've done. I hope it hasn't been too much like herding cats. We have tried to be a good group and work collaboratively with you, and that's down to your leadership that we've managed it.
I think we can all tell from all these warm words that they are genuinely meant. Oh, I'm sorry, Councillor Cato, you also wanted to say something, sorry.
Yeah, very briefly, I don't want to go on, but I want to say thank you to Don personally for taking time out to walk and talk and chat and give his wisdom to me, and I think I speak for other members of the independent group and all others really. He's always been available to have those kind of conversations, and I thoroughly appreciate it, speaking as basically as a newbie. Thanks a lot, appreciate it.
Yeah, as I said, I think we can all tell from these warm words that they come from the heart. We've all really, really appreciated you, and we totally understand that you may need to take a rest, but we will miss you. But you will be around still, so we won't miss you too much. Thank you very much. So I believe the next item is is there any announcements from the Chief Executive? I believe not. And I'm handing over now to our solicitor because item number 13 deals with a political balance, and I believe he'll continue with the next two items as well.
Thank you, Chairperson. So at the annual meeting, I announced the political balance of the Council at this point, and it hasn't changed in the last month. So the political balance remains Independent Group 15, Conservative Group 13, Liberal Democrat Group 10, Labour Group 6, Green Group 4, and there are 2 members not in any political group. Then, Chairman, looking at the group leaders and deputies, the only changes I have had are, as you'd expect following from Councillor Davies' announcement, he has stood down as the leader of the independent group, and Councillor Bridger has taken on that role. I'm not aware of any other changes to group leaderships. In terms of the Council's constitution, I'm suggesting that be dealt with under item 24, which is a reference from the Audit Committee. The Audit Committee has had a number of workshops, which I'm sure Councillor Cato will outline for you when we get to that item, and there are some minor changes recommended in the report, so I'd suggest you deal with that at that point. So that brings you on to the constitutional appointments to obviously the main constitutional positions. And the first, bearing in mind what we've just heard, is that you need to appoint a leader of council. That is an appointment that the council must make. And so, like earlier with Chairman, we look for nominations. And I'm seeing Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Nick. Thank you, Chairperson. I'm pleased to propose Councillor Steve Bridger to be Leader of Council for the remainder of the term of the Council. I've worked with Steve in the Executive over the last 12 months or so. I know that he's a hard-working, dedicated member of the Council, and I'm sure that he will step into Don's shoes and be a strong leader for us in this final year of this council cycle, and I hope that I will find a seconder for that nomination.
I believe Councillor Gibbons is seconding this.
Yes, thank you. It gives me great pleasure to second Councillor Bridger as Leader of the Council. Like Councillor Bell, I've worked with him and he shows all that sort of dedication, attention to detail and calmness, because when you first joined the Executive, we had quite a few difficult issues to deal with and difficult meetings with people, and you dealt with it fantastically well, very calm, very measured, and I really look forward to working with you in this final year. I hope we can achieve great things.
Do we go to the vote? So everybody in favour of Councillor Bridger becoming our new leader? Anybody against? Any abstentions? 2 abstentions. Three, sorry, I missed one. 3 abstentions. That's carried.
The Chairperson, it then falls to the leader to give details of his executive appointments. These are not for voting by the Council. The leader appoints the executive. So we look to the new leader to update us on the membership portfolios.
Thank you. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Catherine. Thank you, Council. Truly. Thank you, Chairperson, and congratulations again. I would first of all like to say thanks to Don on behalf of the independent group. And Don, I note that I think the first reaction that most people had to your announcement was sadness, quickly followed, I think, by understanding, and then great warmth towards you as a person. And I noted that from the comments that people have made just now. There are a few words that people use to describe Don, apart from he's very tall, isn't he? But the one that crops up most of all is integrity. I think, Don, that's something you have in bucket loads. We, as others have said, we've been through 3 incredibly challenging years, and you have led this council with calm assurance and empathy, above all. And as we all know as councillors, there's so much that goes on behind the scenes that our residents do not see, that a leader has to deal with. Don, I know the residents of Pill will be pleased to know that you're not going anywhere, and I know that you will continue contributing to this council, to the work of this council, as you always have done. So thank you again. Thank you, Don. Colleagues, thank you for the confidence you've put in me, at least for 12 months. I'm truly humbled and honoured, actually, to take on this role, together with a brilliant executive team, and everyone in this room, actually, to make a positive difference to the lives of residents in North Somerset. And it won't have escaped a lot of you that, I can't hide the fact I'm a relatively new councillor. In fact, I think it was just 3 years to the day that we were sworn in as councillors, and I was sworn in as a new councillor. Having said that, in my defence, I do have local government running through my veins. Both my parents worked in local government pretty much all their working lives. Before I went to university, my first job, actually, was to deliver the post and the internal mail around County Hall in Taunton. It was a long time ago, those were the days when there were things like county surveyors departments and a county education officer. There was a county architects department, a time I think when 40% of the architects who worked in the UK were actually working for local authorities. I wish we had them back. I wish we could go back in time to a certain extent. Looking back at that time, it all seemed probably so benign compared to the challenges that we're facing now. And to be honest, the challenges that Councillor Ashton faced during his administration, and we're all aware, of course, what's happened in the last two or 3 years with the pandemic, where we've all stepped up. Councils across the country have stepped up to become that fourth emergency service for so many of our residents and businesses. We are a forward-looking council. I'm proud that we're a forward-looking council, and we are 21st century councillors, and we can work with our partners to become, I hope, an exemplary 21st century local authority. I'm proud of our multi-party administration and grateful for the active engagement of opposition councillors in policy and scrutiny. That is incredibly important to me as a previous chair of a scrutiny panel. I think all of that brings great benefit to the residents of North Somerset. As an administration, we are concentrated on the job at hand. Finally, and I think it's important to say this, particularly in the light of the recent motion, I do believe we have a great deal of mutual respect, that there exists a great deal of mutual respect between members in this chamber on all sides. And I do realise that will, in this next year, come under great stress, for obvious reasons. But I truly hope that mutual respect is maintained. I think that is really important, and we lead by example as councillors. I want to thank Council once again for putting their faith in me. I think that if there is such a thing as a honeymoon period, mine might last until item 28 on this evening's agenda. Thank you very much. Thank you. Oh, there's another thing I need to do, isn't there? Which is to appoint an executive, which is as follows. So, Executive Member for Adult Services, Health and Housing, Councillor Mike Bell. Executive Member for Children, Young People and Lifelong Learning, Councillor Catherine Gibbons. Executive Member for Corporate Services, Councillor Ash Cartman. Executive Member for Climate, Emergency and Engagement, Councillor Bridget Petty. Executive Member for Placemaking and Economy, Councillor Mark Canniford. Executive Member for Neighbourhoods and Community Services, Councillor Mike Solomon. And Executive Member for Transport and Highways, Councillor Steve Hogg. I'd like to take this opportunity to particularly thank Councillor Nicola Holland and Councillor Robert Payne for their time working for the Executive. Thank you, Nicola. Thank you, Robert. And I'd like to welcome Councillor Steve Hogg onto the Executive. I'm not sure whether being on the Executive, Steve, will help or hinder the sales of your latest album. But welcome to the Exec. You are truly a rock star. That concludes the appointments of the Executive. Thank you. Thank you, Chairperson. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader. Thank you, Chairperson. So as we normally do, the full listings of those portfolios will be put onto the web shortly, hopefully tomorrow. Then we have appointments to any committees and panels. The only one I'm aware of is, obviously, given the ongoing ill health of Councillor Crosby, I understand that the proposal is for Councillor Snaden to take over as chairperson on the Adult Services and Housing panel. That does require a vote from Council because it's an appointment to a panel.
Can I propose?
Are there any wishes to comment? Councillor Tonkin?
I'm happy to propose him, Chairman.
Thank you. And seconder? Councillor Bridger. Thank you. Can we go to the vote then? All those in favour? Anyone against? Any abstentions?
Thank you, that's carried.
This time, fully unanimous. Thank you. And I believe we are still continuing with our solicitor. Item 16.
Continuing with my roadshow at the moment, Chairperson. Yes, so the municipal calendar you have in the agenda papers before you, we have obviously circulated this at a number of meetings before so that members could put it in diaries. I put it before you for formal approval.
So again, we need a proposer. Councillor Petty and a seconder. Councillor Bridger. Any one in favour? Anyone against? Any abstentions?
Thank you, that's carried. And then continuing with item 17, Chairperson, appointments on outside bodies. With the agenda papers, there is a schedule of the outside bodies to which Council appoints. There are two items which I should bring to Council's attention. Alliance Housing, we are no longer required to put a nominee to that organisation following a change in its constitution, and I have to admit to a mistake on the Joint Safety Consultative Committee, where by mistake I've indicated that there are 8 in total membership. It should read 11. There are currently 8 members with 3 vacancies, so my apologies for that one. There are actually 11 on that particular committee. So if there are any changes now, I'm happy to hear from group leaders. Alternately, if you could email me in the normal way after the meeting and advise me of any of your changes from your groups.
Anybody? Councillor Solomon?
I don't know if we do it now, but I believe our outgoing leader, Dan, or Don as most of us know him, we'd like to go on to the SIP panel, and I'll notify you in accordance with...
That's great. Any internal ones to the panels as well as the outside bodies would be gratefully received. Thank you. Chairman, with that one, if I might take a liberty on this item and also report some external appointments to our panels as opposed to formally to outside panels. As members will be aware, we appoint independent external persons to both the Audit Committee and to the Members' Allowances Review Panel. Both of those have refreshed their membership, and I'm pleased to report that the Allowances Panel has offered places on that panel to Peter Smith and Stefan Rammel, and on the Audit Committee, places have been offered to Peter Bray and Sharon Kolk. So those will be added to those panels for the it's usually a 4-year term initially.
So on to item 18, our forward plan dated the 3rd of May 2022, and I believe our new leader will present this.
Thank you, Chairperson. I think everyone has a copy of the forward plan. It's on the record, so unless there are any questions, I'd like to propose and look for a seconder.
Councillor Solomon is seconding.
And move to a vote, please, Chairperson.
All those in favour? Anyone against? Any abstentions? And item number 19, the policy and scrutiny panel reports, there appear to be none. There's no corporate parenting report either.
Chairman, there's no formal report, but I understand that Councillor Gibbons would like, with Sheila Smith, to introduce the new youth director to us.
Yes, thank you. You'll all be no doubt pleased that there's something from corporate parenting and relieved that you're not going to have to listen to me. It'll be much, much more interesting than that. So I would like to introduce our young director, Beth Swan, who's been doing a fantastic job. She wasn't well enough to speak to us the last time we had planned it, so she's here today. And without further ado, I shall hand over.
Hi everyone, thank you for having me. Forgive me if I look down, I'm not used to so many screens, and it was bad enough having to see myself on Teams. So good evening everyone, thank you for having me here. To briefly introduce myself, I am Bethany Swan and my role is Young Director for Children's Services in North Somerset. Been asked to come here today to talk a little bit about my role within North Somerset. My role when I started was brand new in post, and I've been given the opportunity to make change. I would make this change by gathering the opinions and voices of young people that use our service, whilst also using my own experience as a experienced young person within North Somerset. My role includes a little bit of running focus groups such as our Care Leavers Forum and our North Somerset Youth Parliament, among many others due to be starting soon. Myself, working with Ella Bunton, our Participation and Engagement Officer, have also been helping plan events like the Children in Care and Care Leavers Award Day, which happens at the end of this month. Within our roles, Ella and I also support care leavers to help run interview panels, ensuring their opinions are fed back to our second professional panel, and therefore offering inclusion within our hiring practice. As well as this, I also look at our practice standards and practice framework with the principal social worker. I'm also involved with the corporate parenting panel, which is open for councillors to join and come and hear reports from heads of service, and also be involved in panel discussions with the opportunity to ask any questions they might have. Many councillors in this panel also feature across other panels, occasionally giving talks about their role and experiences and offering support where possible. I was excited to have Councillor Bridget Petty join the North Somerset Youth Parliament and shed a light on the active travel policy, and equally is delighted to hear of Councillor Butte's contribution of beanbags to the care leavers of North Somerset. Thank you for that. It is present from some of the polls we've run already in these groups that young people are definitely interested in talking about the more important things and ambitions that they hold close to themselves. From one of the recent polls, a lot of things have come up that there want to be discussion they want to be involved in the discussion on policies involving environmental issues, discrimination, support for careers, advice on what to do after 16, parks and recreation, including parks for older age groups, better housing, safety of young people, more financial education, better mental health services, and hopefully through these forums and through this role, I will actively be able to understand what is meaningful to young people, whilst also helping them to support their community at the same time. Thank you for listening.
I'd just like to say quickly that done a fantastic job in chairing the Youth Parliament, and I'd like to thank Nicola, who worked so hard to set it up. That's Councillor Holland. And we've all learned something. I mean, what you did with those polls the other day, that was just amazing, the way we got that feedback so quickly. I think that's something we could look at in other areas, actually. So, yeah, it was brilliant. It's just so good to, you know, have somebody who can talk to our young people and, you know, isn't like me, too old, you know. And the other thing I think I've really valued is the fact that you can look at our reports and see that they need to be more accessible for people, you know, and you just cut through the noise and see what's the essential message that needs to get out there to people. So thank you. It's been fantastic so far. We look forward to being moved into the 21st century even faster.
I believe Councillor Solomon would like to say something.
Yes, I'd just like to say welcome and how pleased I am that you've brought the average age down in this chamber tonight quite considerably.
May I add a comment to that? It's just really nice to see a genuinely young face in our midst. Thank you very much. It's very exciting. Oh, Councillor Griggs, please, as well.
Yes, I'd just like to say Beth has joined one of our scrutiny working panels. We're looking at children who are NEET, and her input and her insight and her contributions to ways forward has been already remarkable. So very welcome.
Oh, and Councillor Clayton as well.
Yeah, thank you, Chairperson. Welcome, Beth. A familiar face for me. In another role that I do, I see her quite often. We'll leave it there. So I just want to know, I just want to say how refreshing it is actually to hear this and to hear you speak in relation to engaging with the youth. This is something that's, you know, been desperately needed for some years now. And I just want to say that actually it's, you know, it's really pleasant to hear that your appointment of the council, and knowing you like I do, I know that you will really engage with the youth, and I wish you all the best of luck. So thank you.
And I believe our leader would like to say something too.
Councillor Bridge, yes, still. Thank you, Chairperson. Yeah, I wanted to welcome you as well, Beth. I was due to come to last week's Youth Parliament session. Unfortunately, I had to pull out because of a rather nasty, brutal tooth extraction a couple of days before. I wasn't on good form, but I will be along to the next one. And we need to work together, I think, to get as many young people to register to vote so they can take part in next May's local elections and decide, you know, who they want to, you know, who they want to take to form the next council. Thank you.
And Councillor Holland, please.
I'd just like to say thank you, Beth, for all your help with the setting up of the North Somerset Youth Parliament. It's been fabulous working with you, and I hope we continue. And you've been like a conduit between us old crusties and the young people in our schools and such. And it's been fabulous. And again, thank you.
Councillor Charles.
I'd like to welcome you as well, and also hopefully that you will educate us on the fact that youth isn't a cover-all term for young people generally, and that young people are as diverse and as different as any other section of society and aren't something that should be treated under one umbrella. Thank you.
And I believe Councillor Shopland would like to say something too.
I have to be careful because I was always brought up with Madam Chairman, but I'll keep quiet on that. I'll say ma'am then, that's near to the royalty as you'll get. Youth Parliament. I find it hard to believe, and every time I look in the mirror I register disbelief, but I was chairman of a youth council or parliament, it seems almost yesterday. And it foundered for one very good reason. It could achieve nothing. It was able to make recommendations. It could advise councillors. It could even get our names in the paper. But we could do nothing because we had no money to spend. And I think the thing with the Youth Parliament is how you keep them interested unless you can give them some power to do something. I'm not suggesting how you do that, but it's something for the young lady to consider when she goes forward with the Youth Parliament. If it is going to be just a talking shop, I'll give it 18 months, 2 years, because kids get bored. It has to have something positive to do, and I'll leave that with her.
Thank you, Councillor Shopland. And Councillor Harley, please.
Thank you. I'd like to congratulate Beth, and Beth and I have met many times, and I'm running past a few ideas with her because I've been involved with corporate parenting and young people for a long, long time. More years than, well, it's lovely, but you know, more years than I care to remember. And I'm still in contact with a lot of the people who've gone through our system. The eldest is now 27. And I've learned an awful lot from them. And I think from my point of view, I think it's important that one has empathy with these children and young people. Beth knows that. I think we all have a part to play, but we have to remember that a lot of them have come through the system, and the last thing they want is going through another system. They just want hands-on, you know, I'm one of you touch. And I think that with Lisa Zackheim, I think a way forward would be to get some of the people back. Some of these carers have now grown up to 27 and whatever, doing their own thing, and to get Beth to be involved with them and get ideas and then branch off from there. I know you're going through your youth parliament and everything like that, but there's ways forward. So well done, Beth, and look forward to seeing you again.
Thank you very much, Councillor Harley. And I believe it's now time for item number 21, and that's time for question time. I just wanted to remind anybody who has a question, please can you supply the clerk with a note of their question so that it can be included in the minute after the meeting. So are there any questions? Councillor Keating.
Thank you, Chairperson. A question for Councillor Kenneford, please. Residents in Churchill are seeking to celebrate Her Majesty's Jubilee by establishing a Jubilee Garden, accessible to all residents in the area and beyond. The question is, would it be possible for residents groups and indeed the Parish Council to enter into discussions with North Somerset around acquiring a suitable piece of land owned by the council in the village?
Thank you, Councillor Keating. I suppose if the parish council has a piece of land in mind that is not currently needed by North Somerset Council for another purpose, it would be generally willing to go into discussions over any piece of land. However, looking at the map of Churchill, it does appear that we own very little land other than the locations for the school and the leisure centre sites, but there are small pieces next to the highway. But of course, we would be very happy to talk to you about any piece that you consider may be suitable.
I believe Councillor Charles has a question.
Thank you. Yes, I have a question for Councillor Solomon that I actually got an answer to before arriving here, so I might save him some work. It was regards to pesticides being used by North Somerset Council contractors in Portishead to do open space clearance work. Several residents have contacted me and other councillors expressing concern over this, and particularly the use of, I was dreading saying this, glyphosates within the actual clearance of plant life and vegetation by these contractors. A resident has actually received a response from North Somerset Council to say that in cases they do use glyphosates with regards to that. So can I slightly amend my question to say, are there plans to urgently remove that? And would you support a motion possibly to ban the use of such substances? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Caritas. Yes, Councillor Charles, sorry. Yes, I had the correspondence from your resident, and because of that, I've been looking into our use of glyphosate. And we are trying to move away from it as quickly as possible and looking at alternatives. And we tend to use it a lot more on the highways. And it's being used to kill things like knotweed, but we definitely are reviewing the use of it going forward. And I think with that in mind, apart from the fact that one of our subcontractors is actually going out and actually spraying areas they shouldn't really be spraying, so we're taking them to task to make sure that doesn't happen in future, that they're actually spraying on residents' land rather than just our highways. But it's something I'd very much like to bring forward to scrutiny after this meeting, so we can discuss how we can move away from using these pesticides, because I think you're quite right, we have to try and find an alternative.
I believe Councillor Ashton would like to ask a question.
Thank you. A quick question which has been asked many, many times before. I'm not sure it goes to, but as I think Councillor Canniford agrees with me, I'll ask him. can I have one of these that actually works, please? Yes, please. I've had it reset and serviced and rebooted and whatever else besides kicked around. It freezes, it blacks out. At the last council meeting, I think it was by accident, you couldn't hear me. Yesterday in a group meeting and the meeting with the chief executive, it kept blacking out, it kept dropping the signal. If we're going to rely on these more and more, this is absolute rubbish. I lose my diary every time, I lose the photographs every time, and it still doesn't work. Can we please sort out what's going wrong?
Thank you, Councillor Ashton. I just want to assure you that you weren't kept silent intentionally, and we did get the messages through in the end. I will hand you over to Councillor Ash-Cartman because that is part of his remit, but I just stood to support you entirely, and I think our IT is inadequate today. It was fine when I think you introduced them in 2013. I think they worked, and I think we could rely on that equipment then, but now I think things have changed and we need to really look at how we're going to move forward on that. But I'll let Councillor Cartman give you his ideas.
Sorry, Councillor Ashton, I wasn't aware you were having such problems, but of course, I'll do whatever we need to do. I'm looking to our section 151. I think IT falls within her remit to make sure we get onto that first thing in the morning. I think I've been thinking about this over the last few months, actually, and talking informally to some other councillors. I think we need to have a look at the IT for all councillors, and my initial thoughts, and then I put this out for discussion either now or informally later, was that we need to have cross-party councillor discussions about what we think is appropriate, probably for the new set of councillors coming in next year, whoever that may be. Obviously, we need to get things sorted in the short term for you and any other councillors as well. Please do email me, anyone else, if you've got any issues, and we'll make sure we get people to sort those now. But I think there needs to be a wider discussion on what is appropriate, and of course we need to be mindful of cost, etc. But it may be time, as Councillor Canfer said, that we re-look at what is appropriate. iPads were appropriate maybe a while ago. Now perhaps it's time to move on.
We seem to have quite a long queue for questions at the moment. The next one, I believe, was Councillor Willis, and there are still several waiting. So,
thank you, Chairperson. Sorry, brain's gone. Mine's a point of order, actually. It's not a question as such, but we haven't had a sight of the register, so I am wondering if we have one or where it is or what's happening, as I don't want to be said I'm not here when I clearly am. Thank you.
Chairman, I've taken the liberty of taking the register from up here, so I won't be sending it round.
And I believe Councillor Harley wants to speak again.
Yes, thank you. Well, I'm sorry, I say Chairman. I don't know who I will direct this question to, but it's to do with the points made by the speakers regarding Bamwell Bypass. I think that if whoever is dealing with it, I think we've got to take a hold of this. Well, certainly I'm getting a lot of, not abuse, but not pleasant comments about it. I've certainly lived with Bamwell Bypass for 40 years, and the people of Bamwell have lived with it for a very long time. Somehow or another, the idea that, you know, the developments are going to make all this traffic go through Bamwell, go through Sanford rather than Churchill, I'm sure it's probably some will. But at the end of the day, we've had all these consultations that are saying, absolutely, this is what it's going to be. Because as I've said to people, and I suspect you've probably said the same, where are they going to go if they're going to come through Bamwell and go on to Churchill and whatever? And I really do think we've got to take a hold of this because it's getting extremely nasty. And we talked about that earlier on, and abusive. And I'd like confirmation on that, are we saying that if Bamwell Bypass does not go ahead, that we're not going to get the houses? I don't think so. We're still going to get the houses without Bamwell Bypass.
Did you want to answer that, Councillor Bridger?
Thank you, Chairperson. Thank you, Councillor Harley. I have exec responsibility. I'm keeping exec responsibility for the HIF, the Housing Infrastructure Fund, and Metro West, so I'll do my best to briefly answer that. Obviously, we've been through a second non-statutory consultation, consultations we haven't had to do by law. I think it's not right to say that local residents, not just in Banwell but other villages, haven't been able to so far shape the scheme to date. Actually, seriously, a lot of the comments that came forward through the first consultation last summer were taken on board, and that will happen again with the second consultation, which closed, I think, on the 22nd of April. That will inform the planning application, which will come forward later this year. And picking up on some of the points from the speakers during public participation, I didn't really recognise many of the figures in terms of uplift of cost mentioned by Mr. Johnson, but in terms of the traffic mitigation figures, numbers that have been shared to date, they're not absolutely final. The final ones will again come forward in the planning application. I hope that the points raised by both the speakers and hopefully local ward members too, I hope you've all contributed to that public consultation. If you haven't, please email me with your concerns, and I will take them forward and discuss them with the bypass team. We've had some very, very good recent conversations with, for example, the equestrian community, a specific workshop involving that community. So I take it all on board. It is a difficult project. I'm in favour of the bypass, absolutely. I'm not generally in favour of road projects, but I think around the country there are a few exceptions. Banwell bypass, I think, is one of those exceptions in order to give the people of Banwell their village back. A really important part of that project is mitigation for the village, for the other villages, for Winscombe, Sanford, and Churchill in particular. I am absolutely committed that we keep to our word, that, if we'll have to look at, costs, of course, but we absolutely must not cut back on any of the proposed mitigation measures in those villages. That is integral to that bypass project. So I look forward to looking at the consultation responses to the second consultation, and then we get into the statutory consultation around the planning application process, and we take it from there. But if anyone's got anything to share or ask questions about anything, then they can direct them towards me, and I'll take them forward with the bypass team. Thank you, Anne.
Thank you, Councillor Bridger. I believe the next one is Councillor Uplin, who would like to speak.
Thank you, Chairperson. I think my question goes to Councillor Petty, but could also be Councillor Solomon. I often mistake the two. So I just wanted to ask whether there's a process to reassess areas designated as rewilding zones. I had two children, and their mum asked me about a week ago about a small green outside their home in Woyle. They were all very supportive of rewilding, actually, but they were sad that as the summer months come and we let the grass grow, they were going to lose their area to play. In years past, there's quite a few children who'd used this. It's a very small area just to kind of play, just general playing as children do, like running grass, playing football, just meeting with friends who live. There's probably about 15, 20 houses and then more around it. And it's the kind of only like small amount of green space until you get towards Castle Batch, which is over quite a busy road, two quite busy roads actually to get there. As I say, they were very supportive of rewilding, and were quite happy when one resident suggested maybe finding a new rewilding zone of equal size that could be replaced with it, just to cut the small amount of grass. But yeah, just to ask if there's a process, because I'd hate it if the goals to improve the environment for future generations unintentionally results in sending them indoors to play Xbox, which is apparently what's happening at the moment. So it'd be great if we could get that grass cut so they can enjoy it with their friends. Thank you.
There seem to be so many questions. We're actually threatening to run out of time. So can I ask any future questions to be a little bit shorter, please? So Councillor Parker, I believe, is next. Councillor Solomon.
Can I quickly just answer that one? I will take this up one with you, and we'll talk about it. So, yeah.
Councillor Parker, then, please.
Thank you, Chairperson. My question is to Councillor Solomon. You will recall that on the 11th of March, I presented you with a petition containing 683 signatures calling for the roads on Bourneville to be brought up to an acceptable level of repair. Realising the cost would be in excess of £5 million, I asked that the Council seek funding from external sources. What progress has been made on this request?
I'll try and keep my answer brief as well. This is my portfolio just at the moment, but as of tomorrow, it will pass to my good friend, Steve Hogg. Even before the petition came through, we've been looking at the roads on the Bourneville, and we have put sums of money aside to do some work there, and we'll be more than happy to share with you very soon where that money is being spent.
Yeah, thank you for that. But as you well know, I know what the programme is for the current year, and maybe next year as well, and it's far from satisfactory. You know, as I said, we're talking about £5 million to do a proper job, and that's what we're expecting down there. No more of this, you know, second-rate stuff for Southward.
We only have a total budget of around £8 million, so where we're going to find £5 million to spend on roads without borrowing some money somewhere, I'm at a loss, really. That's the trouble, Peter. Ian, sorry.
Okay, Councillor McQuillan, please.
Thank you, Chairperson, and I'll quickly add my congratulations to you. Very quick question for Councillor Canniford, please. We heard from a resident of Long Ashton recently today, very eloquently. She mentioned the Queen's speech. Could Councillor Canniford please reassure me and other residents that we'll be studying things that come out of the Queen's speech relating to planning and housing targets, and that should there be a change of direction in planning policy, that our local plan will remain flexible in that area?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the question, and I would have been good to have the opportunity to have answered it earlier once the resident was here. And yes, I mean, it was welcome news as I was listening, and hopefully the government choose and decide to reduce our housing numbers, because as we all know in this chamber, the housing numbers we have been given are extremely challenging. They were challenging 4 or 5 years ago when the previous administration were trying to find sites for homes, and they have just made it far worse by about 20%. So with a bit of luck, government will see that error, it will reverse those figures. I'm not holding out hope, but what we can't do is assume that is going to happen, because if we do, all these sites will be built on by the developers, who clearly have a clear way to the front door of number 10. So we do need to make sure we have a plan in place. But yes, I can assure you that if our figures are reduced, that will definitely be reflected in our local plan.
I believe Councillor Snaden wants to speak next.
Yeah, thank you. Going back to the IT, Ash, is there a possibility of going to have the option of Android tablets instead of the iPads? I just find them very difficult to work with, but I'm used to Android, that was all.
I'd have to ask. I haven't got a problem with it, but it's a security IT thing, but I'll look into it.
And finally, Councillor Quadling, sorry, you keep looking at me.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. Sorry. Congratulations, though. I think this is a question for the leader, and congratulations to you, Councillor Bridger. So apologies, it's not come in advance. It's not to put you on the spot, although actually to take advantage of how I've enjoyed working with you and some of our shared perspectives. Since 2019, I've struggled to get any answers, any progress around effective, inclusive engagement and consultation. As this council deals with increasingly big challenges and affecting all of our residents, surely we need to speak to, engage with, listen to and respond to all of those, including those most vulnerable. I'm thinking specifically around our consultation on big projects, which primarily takes place online or with identified cohorts of predominantly community active residents, therefore excluding those with low levels of literacy, who are often the poorest in our society, those with English as a second language who may have come to this country, those with learning disabilities. We're talking thousands of residents. This is not a marginal, minimal issue. I have been bounced to successive executive members responsible and assistants responsible for engagement, and we haven't managed to get a consistent conversation going. It's something I've raised in scrutiny panels, as you know, and offered some thoughts. So, yeah, just where does it sit within your vision of the executive? And I'm sure you might agree it comes into to strategic communications and indeed strategic policy within your remit.
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Codling. Thanks, Sarah. It actually falls within Councillor Petty's remit, and I'll ask her to respond in a second. But just very, very briefly, yeah, it is incredibly important to me. I've got a background in communications. I think we have made progress. I think we need to grow bigger ears as a council. I think we need to be more creative. I recognise there's quite a lot of disquiet actually around some of the consultations around some of our bigger schemes in the way that the questions are framed. I think we need to recognise that. Having said that, I think we need to recognise when we're asking people to, it's not always a, do you agree with this scheme or not? Sometimes we're just asking people to help us shape the scheme, but I think we need to be more upfront about what we're actually asking of people. But yeah, I recognise the concerns, and I think it would be a key priority for me and interest. And we can talk about it at length, I'm sure. But I recognise what you're saying, Sarah, and I'll hand over to Councillor Petty.
Thank you, Councillor Codling. I know we've also responded, maybe actually last council meeting, partly on, I think, engaging different communities with climate emergency. Part of my portfolio is going to change slightly, and I will be responsible for inclusion and diversity. And that is properly recognising the different groups in our society and how we need to properly engage with those different groups, whether that is a health attribute or whether that is an ethnic diversity. And those are two completely different aspects, but that we really need to reach further and with different techniques and methods with which to properly engage our society. So that has been more richly referenced in my portfolio. And so although it's kind of only just started, it shouldn't be starting now, and it's not, because the work of Louise Roberts and our disability work and groups is active. And I have met with the chair of, and it's just one thing, but one of the Access Forum, I've met with the chair recently in the past couple of weeks. But there is much more to do, and I recognise, and I'm looking forward to working with the new leader on properly working out what we can achieve in the coming year. Thank you.
Thank you. Just to let you know, we're really getting a bit short of time, so I'm going to allow 2 more questions, and please can you keep them fairly brief. Councillor Shopland is next, and after that Councillor Gibbons, and then
I was just going to add something to Councillor Petty's statement, actually, rather than a question.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just very quickly to say that on the back of the anti-racism motion, Councillor Petty has taken up that articulated role in her portfolio. And, you know, Sarah, you've engaged with the anti-racism working group on the town council and had those conversations with all sorts of groups with me. And we're hoping to take that kind of engagement forward across the district. I mean, only today I was talking to a particular group, and I've got their contacts, and I'll pass them on to Bridget, so that we can really start talking to, as you say, people who don't speak English well, but make sure that they know what we're doing and we're speaking and consulting with them. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Gibbons. And finally, Councillor Shopland, please.
Thank you, ma'am. Briefly to Councillor Bridger, as a future project, would you consider extending the Banwell bypass to the A38, which would obviate a lot of traffic problems in that area?
Thank you, Councillor Shopland. I understand that that was quickly taken out of scope, you know, a few years ago, and I think, we've got basically 97 million pounds for the HIF project, and we are where we are with that. So I see there's no plans to extend now that bypass through to the A38. That was taken out of scope a few years ago.
I'm sorry, but we'll have to come to an end of question time because there's still an awful lot on our programme. Sorry, Councillor Bryan.
Point of information, Chairman.
Sorry?
Point of information.
Point of information.
Yeah. Chairman, it's 36 years ago I first became a councillor, and on our meetings, full council meetings, we always have 20 minutes for speaking. But really, that's insufficient, because when you think the rank and file, it's the only chance that they can have to speak to the executives or the leader of the council. And I really do feel that in future, chairpersons should be far more lenient and extend that time wherever necessary. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, okay, can we now go on to the next item, which is, I've lost my point now. Okay, reports and matters referred from the executive are none. Reports and matters referred from the policy overview and scrutiny panels, also none, fortunately. So that's not too long. Item number 24, I believe Councillor Cato is going to take us through the references from the Audit Committee, and it has some implications for our constitution. Councillor Cato.
Thank you, Chairperson. I won't take too much time over this. At the end of the last few months of last year and the first month or so of this year, the Audit Committee, the Chair of PCOM and the Monitoring Officer spent a number of days doing workshops and investigating the Constitution to look to review it and revise it in ways that we hope will be beneficial. It's part of the terms of reference of the Audit Committee to do this role. On the 23rd of March, we circulated around, or I circulated around on behalf of all of the people that were involved, the marked up Constitution with the changes proposed and considered. On the 28th of April, we received it to the Audit Committee, and we noted the changes that had been referred back to us. Those changes are now being recommended to you, and that we adopt those by Council. There will be other changes coming forward, which are the financial regulations and the contract standing orders, which we've had to wait for because of the bulk of material we have to cover, the detail of it, and also because the procurement rules were changing. That will be taking place over the next few months. Exactly how many, we're not quite sure yet. So with the changes that we already have, you have seen them, you have a chance to contribute to them. I recommend them to Council.
Can we, Councillor Charles seconding this? Or? Thank you. Any debate? Any comments? Yes, Councillor Charles.
I just want to commend the Audit Committee and Councillor Cato on this, and I, being a bit of a constitution geek, actually had a look through, and it's a really good piece of work. I'm also a bit of a democratic reformer as well, and I had a very interesting conversation with the council solicitor on Monday, because I wanted to know what powers we could have to make council more democratic and accountable. I'm not a fan of the executive system. I think it's extremely undemocratic, but I got told rather politely that you can't. I would like to make an appeal to the new leader, once he's now achieved power, to find ways within rules and regulations to give it away. Because one of our policies, or one of your policies as an administration, is open, fairness and transparency. And I'd love you to do further piece of work, Councillor Cato, with the executive on actually finding ways to bring more power to scrutiny committees, but also in light of Councillor Codling's really good question, more powers to our citizens and communities as well, using the Constitution, and democratic debate, as was mentioned here recently as well, to encourage the role of all 50 members of this council, not just the executive. Thank you.
Councillor Petty.
Thank you.
I've written something I want to say in response slightly but separately, in response to Councillor Charles's comments. I do know that in other parts of the country, the committee system is another technique that some councils choose to adopt. That is another way of looking at the situation. So I just kind of wanted to air that. Of course, Green councils often support a committee system where more councillors are involved in a more democratic process of decision making. And not to forget that although you referred to them as scrutiny panels, they are policy and scrutiny development panels. And so it is for the councillors to, I just throw that out there. I wanted to come back to this document and thank John and Nick for their work. Reflecting on the anti-racism motion that was passed unanimously last month, a recommendation was made that Black, Asian and minority ethnic communities might participate in policy development and process change. With that in mind, and given that the Constitution is a pillar to that, I wanted to propose that perhaps myself and John contact individuals who are working to represent these wide groups and ask if this is of interest, and if a review with a comment session would be something that would be something they would like to participate in. I appreciate that the head of legal services must ensure that we do not vary from the law, but I think that language matters, and as does the contents of how this document is constructed. So although timeframes of council meetings and things like that don't always line up, I did want to reflect. And again, coming back to what I said earlier of my taking on this additional role with further work on inclusion and diversity, I'd like to propose, not formally in this report, but that I'd like to take this document to wider community groups and have that discussion.
Thank you very much, Bridget. Appreciate that. I just want to say that, of course, we'll take forward any input that we can get with regard to improving the Constitution. It's an important thing that we do this. And the other thing I'd like to say, and thank you for your compliments to myself and to Nick Brain, but to be fair, it's the Audit Committee and the Chair of PCOM and the Monitoring Officer, all of us together, that were involved in producing these updates and changes, and so they should be appreciated and applauded as well. So I'd just like to mention that, really. I don't know if, Nick, you want to say anything else?
Chairperson, if I can just respond to Councillor Petty, I think that forms part of the discussion Councillor Charles and I had earlier in the week, because what you're proposing is already possible within our scrutiny panels. I think it's the conversation we had was how do we use those panels to best effect? Do we use open days and the challenge forum and so on? So welcome the debate and certainly happy to have that discussion with you.
And I believe Councillor Bell wants to say something too.
Thank you, Chairperson. I was just going to say, can we just take this opportunity to strike while the iron's hot and actually respond to Councillor Bryant's point about the time limits and just amend Standing Order 18.4 so that we don't have the arbitrary time limit on question time. I'm perfectly happy to leave it at the Chair's discretion if we need to have a time limit, if the debate needs to be curtailed because of time pressure. But why don't we just eliminate the 20-minute rule? Because that does seem ridiculous, and I completely agree with Councillor Bryant that this is an important opportunity for executive members and chairs of panels to ask questions and challenge decisions that have been made, and we shouldn't be artificially curtailing it.
Can I just respond to that briefly? It's a conversation we did have with the monitoring officer, and yes, I'd like to hand over to Nick Brain again for him to respond to that and perhaps summarise our conversation.
So again, I think it's in the hands of members. I know on occasions question time has been abused when people have filibustered through question time to answer one question in 20 minutes. So, you know, the tactics in the chamber are come into this as well. But certainly, if you want an extended period, I would recommend some sort of time limit, because at least that gives the chairperson a framework. But certainly, if that's the view of members, then clearly we can build that in.
So if I can follow up on that and just say that if you would like us to look into that again in the future, if you want any more people involved in the conversation, not too many, I'd be really pleased to hear the different points of view and perspectives. Thank you. With that, I'd like to...
Sorry, I was just going to come back in. Sorry.
Yeah, go for it.
If I may. Sorry, Chairperson. I mean, I do understand the logic of this in terms of meeting management, but I kind of feel as though we don't have arbitrary time limits for anything else, do we? You know, we don't say, oh, we can debate this report, but we can only debate it for a certain period of time. That is left to the discretion of the chair in terms of the conduct of the meeting. So I don't see why question time should really be any different. So my feeling is that we just remove the time limit and we simply leave it as a meeting management issue for the chair. Beyond that, and I'm sure we've had a debate earlier, haven't we, about the importance of respecting the council and respecting the meetings, and I'm sure that members will respect that approach and not try to monopolise the debate, or dare I say, have 3 answers to every question.
I'll second that.
Councillor Bell, I'd be pleased to second that if you make it a proposition.
So is this an amendment? Can I have a seconder?
You've had 2 seconders.
I've already had 2 seconders.
So,
okay, I wasn't looking.
If Councillor Cato, as chairman of the audit committee bringing this forward, is happy to take that on board, I don't think you need to vote on an amendment. That can be part of the motion.
Certainly, I'm happy to take it on board. I'd take guidance from the monitoring officer really as well on this one.
We can facilitate that change. Thank you.
Well, sounds perfectly reasonable to me. Yeah, excellent. Councillor Harley.
Thank you. Councillor Cato, I've just got one little query on this, which I'm not terribly happy with, and it's and probably the monitoring officer will say whether I'm right or wrong. It's asking that the Constitution be updated with gender-neutral text, example, chairman being replaced by chairperson. I'm really, honestly and truly, not happy with that at all. Well, you've got your ideas and I've got mine, thank you. The thing is that when you go out, when I was chairman of North Somerset Council, I was quite happy to be addressed as chairman. I wasn't going to be a chairperson, I wasn't going to be a chairwoman, I wasn't going to be anything. Call me anything you like. Where are we going to end on this? We're beginning on this, we're changing it. I'm going to tell you, quite frankly, go out and introduce yourself. When you go out and introduce yourself, hello, I'm Councillor Karen Haverton, I'm chairperson of North Somerset Council, and that will sound ridiculous in my book. Why are we trying to change the Constitution on this? I mean, are we all trying to make ourselves to be together? We're all the same and whatever. I really am totally flummoxed. And I've had to stay, because I should be at home, to actually raise my objections on that, and I think it should be taken out. If that's not I bow, obviously, to the monitoring officer, but I feel quite insulted about it, quite frankly. And I think that we're all going to get totally confused. We're going to say chairperson, chair, chairman, chair, whatever you like, and we're going to get absolutely confused. I won't remember it. And, you know, you're trying to change something that's gone on for years. I respect chairman of council, chairman of the scrutiny panel. I don't need all of that. Thank you very much.
Well spoken.
Maybe I can reply to that directly. I wasn't aware this was either a constitutional issue. I was asked which title I would prefer, and I simply said I'm not a man and I'm not a chair, so that seemed a good compromise. I have no passion about this whatsoever. You can, whatever you would like to call me, I'm very happy. You can call me Madam Chairman, you can call me Chair, you can call me Chairwoman or even Charwoman. I don't care. Councillor Petty.
And I don't actually think it's very funny. But at the end of the day, I'm making a comment, and it was in the Constitution for change. Nothing at all about what you've said at the beginning, but I would like to see your chain around your neck.
I think we'll go on to Councillor Petty. Thank you.
Women's rights and the equality of women and women accessing different roles and different jobs in our society has not always been the same. And I have not seen as many aspirational and inspiring women in my life doing roles that I could look up to as I grew up as a young girl. And I'm trying to create a different world for my children, my two daughters. And I don't want them to grow up in a world where they're supposed to be called man this and man that. And I'm sorry, that matters to me. And I proposed this change to the Constitution, and it is up for the vote tonight as to how we choose whether to change this document, which defines this institution. We can stick with the past, we can stick with how it's always been done, but personally, as growing up as a woman in this country, I have not seen enough people with titles that reflect the fact that I am a woman and I would like to be welcomed in every space. So I proposed this change. I wrote to the team who was working on this constitution, and it was me who said, I believe that this document needs to reflect what I'm looking for in the future for my daughters. And I'm doing that for the girls of this country and this county. I don't mind if you want to vote against it. Let's just have a vote, and I'd love it if we move to the vote at this point. We have a number of things on the agenda, and I don't have a problem if people want to call the person at the front of the room whatever she feels comfortable with, but I'm proposing a constitutional change in that document, and that's why I did that. I'm keen to see this meeting proceed through the number of items that it has on this evening, so I can return home to my family. Thank you.
Councillor Clayton.
Yeah, just quickly on this. Shouldn't it be down to the individual that takes up the position of how they would like to be referred to? I think, you know, if Anne wants to be referred to as a chairman, and if you want to be referred to as a chairperson, that should be your own prerogative, and I think that's what it should be in the Constitution, personally.
Thank you, Councillor Clayton. Councillor Codling.
Thank you, and I do apologise. I agree, Councillor Petty, we've got a lot to get through, but I do think this is important. Firstly, these things can be terribly delicate, and I think progress is important. We have to take care how we do it, so that we're not seen to be doing it for reasons to trample over tradition for the sake of it. Because I think that downgrades the message, actually. It can dilute it, so that's not helpful. For what it's worth, to me, a chairman is a function, and I can say, my own daughter, I was so proud when she told me, Mummy, there was a woman Prime Minister in this country. And I said, really, darling? She was very young. She said, yeah, it's Ros. And she meant Ros Willis, not Margaret Thatcher, because she knows that Ros is was a chairman at that time. That's the capacity she'd met her. So I'm just saying, I think it's about how we support and promote people, although I do understand language is important, but let's not detract from the core issues about equality and inclusion. And it would be nice if we practice what we just preached, and if a colleague holds a different view, I don't entirely agree with Anne, but I wouldn't laugh out loud and mock her when she's sharing her view across the chamber, colleagues.
So do we suggest we vote on this, or is this too controversial to actually have a vote? I stumbled completely innocently into this hornet's nest. I was asked what I wanted to be called, and that's what I opted for. I have no strong opinion on it whatsoever. Councillor Pilgrim.
I think that it's exactly what James said. We are called what we want to when we take the role. And I would prefer it if that's what we were voting to say tonight.
Councillor Cherry.
Hello, I'd just like to support Councillor Petty, because I do think we should have a vote. Language matters. It leads the way. And although we're not disrespecting anybody else's opinions, we're just asking that, that there could be some change. And it's not going to hurt anybody. So let's be sensible. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cherry. And Councillor Gibbons.
Yes, I would just like to support Councillor Petty on the wider issue of gender-neutral language. I've raised this in another organisation because I've been approached by people who are non-binary, and it's just very divisive when you don't have gender-neutral language. So from that point of view, for our wider community, I think it's important.
Thank you, Councillor Gibbons. I believe Councillor Cato wants to say something too.
Yeah, I'm just wondering about what's the best way through this. It requires more conversation, more discussion. Everybody's point of view I've heard makes sense to me. So, you know, there's a lot going on here about how we approach it. And I think, you know, well...
Can we not just take a vote? I mean, let's just take a vote.
I think we should just go and take a vote, because otherwise we're going to go around in circles with this one. So please, can we go to a vote? Or, so,
Nick Brain,
who wants to formulate the question?
Nick Brain,
Chairman, in which case you have a formal closure motion before you. That is that you move immediately to the vote. If, in your opinion, the matter has now been sufficiently discussed, you must ask the Chamber whether they are happy to move straight to the vote, and if so, before you do so, Councillor Cato would have the right of reply on the motion that he brought from the Audit Committee.
Okay,
Chairman, point of information. What are we voting on? I'm quite in favour of Chairman's choice. It's got a certain ring to it.
Chairman, you're voting on the recommendation as referred from the Audit Committee, which is to adopt the changes which were in the marked up version, including the gender-neutral text as supported by Councillor Petty and the Audit Committee, plus the removal of the time limit for question time. That is the motion before you. So Councillor Cato should first sum up on the motion, then you should decide whether you want to move immediately to the vote, and if that is passed, you move to the vote without further debate.
Chairman, could I have a point of order? I think the problem is that there are issues in this that we're quite happy to vote for, and we've spoken to and are happy to vote for. There's just the one issue that we're not happy, so perhaps that could be taken separately, so as we can have that vote on that one issue. So I suggest the issue of what that is called, that we take that separately, because there are some of this constitution that we're happy to take the changes on. So if we're not happy to vote on one bit, we're going to vote all of it.
Chairman, you have a closure motion. The debate should now end. Councillor Cato should be given his right of reply, and then the Chamber should be invited to ask whether you go straight to the vote. The debate should now stop until you've dealt with the closure motion.
Can I ask Councillor Cato to summarise?
So the motion is written in the paper on page, if I can find the page number, sorry about this, folks, which I can't. Page 37. It was resolved that the Audit Committee confirm the changes proposed from the workshop sessions as shown in the marked up, linked in the report of the committee, and it was further recommended to Council that those changes be adopted by Council and the monitoring officer be asked to update the Constitution and in consultation with chairpersons of Audit Committee, Corporate PCOM and the Overview Management and Scrutiny Panel to make further changes to address the points raised by officers and Councillor Petty as described in the report, with the addition of no time limit on question time. Is that a fair assessment, Nick?
That's
Rainford?
correct.
So that's the motion. That is the motion that we accept chairperson.
Point of
So can we go straight to a
point
vote?
of order, Chairman?
Chairman, there should be no further points of order.
No
You
more
have a
points of
closure
order.
motion,
Sorry, we've
so you
we've
should-
really discussed this to death.
That's stupid to put.
Chairman, can I remind members there should be respect for the Chair. The Constitution currently provides that this is a closure motion which should now be put to the Chamber to decide whether or not you proceed immediately to the vote on the main motion. So the immediate vote should be, do you support now taking the vote?
Do you support now taking the vote? Those against? Any abstentions?
The vote on the motion should now be taken, Chairman.
So can we vote on the motion now? All those in favour?
Chairman, Madam Chairman, you have moved to the vote. There is no further debate on any items.
Any objections? Any abstentions?
The motion is carried, Chairman.
Motion is carried. Right, I suggest we move on to item 25. There's a report on the Avon Fire Authority, and I believe Councillor Tucker is to present.
Thank you, Chairperson. I'm pleased to present the Fire Authority report, and I'll certainly do my best to answer or get an answer if anyone has any questions. Thank you.
Councillor Shopland, any questions or comments?
Fair enough, but
I'm sorry,
there was
but
an
we've dealt with
amendment
that, Councillor Shopland.
there was
The
an
motion has
amendment
been
to
carried.
it. The amendment was that we should go in for things called chairpeople. Now that was an amendment, and that should have been put as a separate item, not as a part of the general motion, because the proposer of the original motion was never asked if they would take it on board, and secondly, neither was his seconder. So it's completely out of order.
Chairman, with respect to the Council, I totally disagree. The reference included the matters referred from the officers and Councillor Petty from the Audit Committee. That was the motion that was originally changed. The only addition was the removal of the time limit on question time, and that was accepted by the Chair of Audit Committee. As a reference, it doesn't need a seconder. It comes from the references from the committee.
Thank you, Solicitor. Now, the second item on item 25, Avon and Somerset Police Crime Panel, there's no report. And the WECA Combined Joint Scrutiny Committee, there's none, but Solicitor to note that WECA said scrutiny minutes on
Chairman, yes, there was a
can't
meeting of the
actually read it
WECA
anymore.
Scrutiny Committee, and whilst Councillor James isn't able to join us to report back, he has told us that those minutes are available on the WECA website.
Right, item 26, dispensation regarding the absence from meetings under section 85, I presume, of the Local Government Act 1972. Solicitor, I believe you to present on this.
Indeed, Chairman. The report, I hope, is self-explanatory. Obviously, Councillor Crosbie has been ill for a while with ill health and not able to join us. You will be aware that there's a 6-month rule that any member absent from meetings for 6 months is automatically removed from office, and the council has to declare their post vacant. The only way of avoiding that is for council to grant a dispensation before the 6 months is up. Therefore, I bring a report to you for you to consider whether or not to grant that dispensation. I'm suggesting that if you do, you grant it until November, when either Councillor Crosbie will hopefully be progressing towards better health, or you will be able to reconsider the matter again then.
Councillor Bridger.
Thank you, Chairperson. Yeah, I know this is a very short technical paper, but I think it would be remiss of us at this point not to record our, I hope I can speak for full council on this, to record our heartfelt wish that Councillor Crosbie makes a speedy recovery from his current illness. Prior to falling ill, Mark was a particularly active and respected councillor, I think, across the chamber. And I'd be grateful, Chairperson, if everyone agrees that be recorded, that our wishes to Mark for his speedy recovery be recorded in the minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bridger. And Councillor Tonking.
Yes, I would like to, if Councillor Bridger, did you actually propose that motion? You did. I'd like to second it in that case.
Thank you. Councillor Shopland.
Will the proposer and seconder of the motion please take on board one extra word, a speedy and full recovery?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Shopland.
Yes, anybody else wants to speak? Anybody? So can we proceed to the vote? All those in favour? Anyone against? Any abstentions? Unanimous. That's nice. Item 27, commissioning and procurement plan for our new energy contract. I believe Councillor Cartman is to present.
Yeah, thank you, Chairperson. Lovely. I'm hoping that 2.5 hours in, this can be an island of brevity and consensus in the council, but we'll see. Hey? It's for debate, and that's the purpose. So I think this goes back to the last council when we, or it wasn't we then, it was they, declared a climate emergency, and this, I think, is an important part of doing that. I thought the tricky thing with this, actually, when we've had all member meetings on it and executive meetings, etc., was going to be finding green contracts that were affordable. And I mean that in the financial sense, because I was worried they would be very expensive. But actually, the good news on this, if you've read the paper, is to get a net zero green energy contract for the council is just about a 3% premium, which I think is money well worth spent, personally. That'll take out 3,500 tonnes of carbon out of our carbon footprint. And I think, given the climate emergency we've declared, the extra marginal costs that entails, I think that's a brilliant investment that we should make on behalf of our community. So I wholeheartedly support that and hope you do too. There are other measures we are doing, of course, to reduce our energy usage, but they kind of sit separate from this report, which is about the energy that we actually buy. I would say on the energy we buy, this doesn't preclude us buying from local sources in the future, but at the moment, the state of the market means we will be going with a large provider. Now, the other thing that's proved to be more tricky, of course, is the price and the volatility in the market. And this was actually proposed to come through to last council, and we decided to withdraw it at the last minute, hoping that more stability would come back to the energy markets. Well, that doesn't seem to have happened, which is why the proposal you've got there today gives a delegated authority to the Section 151 officer to strike the best deal possible for us as a council in consultation with myself. I believe it's with the, it's got there the climate energy, I've lost my words now, Nikki Webb, and a few officers there, so we can actually, through our energy consultants, get the best spot price at the time. The advice we're getting at the moment is it's likely to be a 12 or 24-month deal. We normally strike for longer, I think, as probably councillors who've been around longer than I will be able to confirm, but that seems to be the best approach. So we will be working with those over the next few months. I think the contracts end or start to end on a rolling basis from September, so we'll be striking contracts over the next few months at the appropriate time. I think the cost upgrade, I think in the budget, the MTFP we set an increase of about a 1.8 to a 2.3 million pound budget, so a big increase there. I believe the prices at one point were even 100% up, but they've fallen back since. So I think this is what I'd like to propose to Council today, is that we have that delegated authority to strike those contracts at best value with the 3% green premium. And I'd like to open it for debate, please.
Do we have a seconder, first of all? Councillor Caniford. And anybody wishing to speak? Or Councillor Charles.
I just noticed with reference to Russia and Russian gas assets that you were unable to obtain any firm assurances with regards to Russian gas, and that they would comply with sanctions only. Were there suppliers that were more robust in their viewpoints with regards to Russian resources or than others? And could some assurances that they will take a really robust approach with regards to Russian gas supplies be incorporated into any agreement that we have?
Yeah, we had, shall I answer that now? We did have a lot of problems in terms of understanding that. The main worry was we'd be like another council, I believe, somewhere that was dealing with Gazprom. We're not in that thing, but I think it is hard due to the nature of gas supplies. I don't know whether Amy can add any more, perhaps in a moment, in terms of we will keep that top of mind in making sure that we don't have any Russian oil or gas, if possible, but yeah.
Councillor Petty.
I'd like to thank everybody involved in producing this report and thank Councillor Cartman for the conversations that we've had and engagement that you've had in reaching out, because obviously, you know, traditionally, procurement, finance, these decisions were solely based on best value, and they still need to be based on best value. But best value means thinking about the externalities, the consequences to our purchasing decisions and our pricing decisions. And we, as a purchaser, can make decisions. And just reflecting back to others, each of us as individuals has to make decisions at the moment. And I'm sure that many of you, like me, have received the bills from their suppliers saying their prices are going up. So it's definitely a difficult time with which to be procuring energy. But thank you very much for the work done in this report to describe you know, the work being done and how these decisions are being taken. I think when I was thinking about this sharp increase in electricity prices and gas, it certainly made me think it's a good time to have solar panels on the roof. So when I got to the section where it said we'll be putting more solar panels on our roofs, I think that it's, you know, we've kind of been saying that for a few years now. It needs to happen now because it is an investor save. So anything that we can do to fast track that piece of work, I really think needs to happen. I know they're separate things, but you can see how if your input costs are going to keep going up, but you can generate it yourself, let's get on with it. So thank you very much for this work, and I hope that others will support pushing this motion through. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Petty. Any further comments, or can we proceed to the vote? All those in favour? Anyone against? Any abstentions? Unanimous. Item 28, our accommodation strategy update. And may I just draw your attention to the fact that there is an exempt appendix in this report. I I also note that it's going to be Councillor Bridger and not Councillor Cartman who's going to present. But if anybody wants to debate any of the items contained in the exempt appendix, we need to decide to take that at the end, otherwise we'll have to exempt the whole debate, and I'm not in favour of that. So can I ask our solicitor how we proceed with this?
Chairperson, the best way is to start the debate. If any member wants to refer to any of the information in the exempt appendix, if they could indicate that at the start of their speech, and then we will either be able to take them later in the debate or at that stage take the vote on going into exempt session.
Thank you very much. In that case, we'll go to the debate. Anybody wants to comment or... Oh, sorry.
Thank you, Chairperson. Yeah, this one's for me to present. Second bite at the cherry. Obviously, we brought a paper to Council in February, but not everyone was able to access the exempt report. Members, the report in front of you today is about the future of Castlewood, and let's not beat about the bush. It's about starting a process of winding down the Council's use of that building. Back in February 2021, the accommodation and asset development strategies were adopted by the Council. It seems a long time ago now. And the retention of the town hall as the primary location for our office-based staff was outlined at that time, as was the need to consider our assets outside of the core office to facilitate face-to-face meetings. So, as I say, the first recommendation in this report seeks to be definitive. It's to draw a line on this, really, and effectively it's, to state our intention as a council, as I say, to progress a phased withdrawal from Castlewood and release it for development. Should council agree to that tonight, and I think it's important to stress that not everyone who's in that building will be leaving immediately. It's a process. Further work is required over the coming months to appraise whether the site at Castlewood should be sold, repurposed for some other use, or redeveloped. And I think you'll see the second two recommendations, and I think it's worth noting that the information in the exempt appendix helps, I think, inform or speaks to the second two bullet points of the recommendation, and will help us come to a decision later in the year when this comes back about what we actually do with that site, pending a decision tonight to withdraw or not. So this is important, so I do want to say a few more things, but before I make the case for withdrawal, I wanted to move the recommendations of the report, so I look for a seconder. Councillor Caniford, thank you. Chairperson and members, you don't need to tell me that much has changed, not just in the last 2 years, but the previous 5 years, the previous decade. We're in a completely different place now to where we were in 2009, 2010. The pandemic has transformed our ways of working and accelerated the transition to a more permanent and flexible, agile working. And I say accelerated, and I think it's important to say accelerated. That was already happening. That was the direction of travel before the pandemic. The pandemic has just made this happen at pace, something we've, over the last year or two. In terms of our staff numbers, they've fallen dramatically, as we all know, since 2010. I think the figures quoted in the report from 2012, but excluding schools, in 2010 we had over 2,000 staff on the payroll. At the end of 2021, and these figures are, I asked for these figures, so they're correct. At the end of 2021, again excluding schools, we had 1,314 staff on the payroll. We have lost a lot of people. I don't think we're assuming that all of our staff will work predominantly from home in the future. I think what we're saying is we are moving or have moved to a flexible and agile way of working, and that's for the longer term. Despite what you might hear from Jacob Rees-Mogg, we aren't going back to what it was like pre-pandemic. As a result of that, we need a smaller primary office footprint for the council, where we think we can accommodate our workforce based on the needs of the council to deliver its services, and that's important. It's service-led. Professionally, I've done a lot of work in the HR field, and I know that good employers are at the moment taking a very measured sort of hybrid approach to how their staff work for the benefit of the well-being of their staff, engagement of their staff, to be their most productive selves. And I think, as it says in paragraph 3.6 in the report, we run frequent pulse surveys of our staff to evidence the choices that we're making as a council. Members, in my view, and it's just my view, but if our staff are happy with that, it's my view that as councillors we shouldn't get in the way on matters of HR. Members, Castlewood is becoming increasingly unaffordable to run. From a revenue perspective, the site represents a net financial cost to the council's budget of approximately £1 million per annum. There's also the issue of energy use, which is, I think, spelt out at length in the report. I'll come to that in a second. I think, importantly, projections show that further reductions in occupancy and the associated annual revenue that will bring to the council are expected. So we continue that. The direction of travel will continue in terms of finding it very difficult to find people to move into office space like Castlewood. Now, I recognise that there's a dependent success factor on some of the ongoing work streams in order to deliver an exit out of Castlewood, should that be what council decides this evening. I know that members have on many occasions sought to be reassured on the accessibility of the council to residents, should they need to access support for and access to our services. So I think the report provides some data about that, about the pre-pandemic use of Castlewood, although it's important to say this isn't the customer services strategy. This is about the building as an asset. The customer services strategy we approved as an executive just a few weeks ago, last month. And I think we felt that there's an opportunity now to deliver something at least as accessible, if not more so, than Castlewood ever was, as a place where our residents could go to seek support. We want to get out of Castlewood because we don't need the building anymore, and we can't afford to retain the office, retain an office that we frankly don't need to use. That's really the crux of it. The ongoing revenue implications, that's £1 million a year and counting, and the ongoing pressure of backlog maintenance on that site makes the site unaffordable. As paragraph 3.10 in the report demonstrates, the building also leaks energy. The energy performance of Castlewood is very, very poor, really poor, comfortably within the worst category of public buildings in the country, actually. It accounts for nearly 20% of our energy use as an authority. 40% of the net annual costs of the building are related to energy usage at the site. That's at the moment. The building currently generates about 11% of the council's directly generated carbon emissions. Not good. I hope members will agree we no longer leave Castlewood, and getting out will mean it won't be a burden on future budgets. But it's more than that. There is the potential we could actually be part of delivering something really, really positive. We could be part of a really positive story through retaining active stewardship of the future of that site and building something in its place however form that should take, which is, truly something that Clevedon and North Somerset needs. So I'm sure there are lots of questions, but I think I'll stop there, Chairperson. I'm hoping that Alex Hearn is joining us virtually, should there be any questions from members that I can't answer myself, but I'd like to open it up to the floor, please.
Thank you, Councillor Bridger. I believe Councillor Ashton wants to speak.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm actually quite disappointed with the report. I do understand the changing costs and the changing needs, but the report seems to be entirely negative on the role that Castlewood has played. And just some basic statistics, like 69% of staff live in Greater Western, but only 11% live in Clevedon. Well, that's not the comparison. Castlewood was a facility for most of the areas and villages in the north, not just Clevedon. Things like only 1.5% of face-to-face meetings are in Castlewood. Well, that's because when you phone up Castlewood, or when you walk in, you get told bluntly, well, you've got to go to Western. So it was a poor service, but it could have been better, and it could have grown. As we need less of the space, well, then surely we could be looking at using it as a hub for start-up offices for small businesses and in a community that needs some help. It also mentions things like 88% of the staff want to work from home to some degree. Well, that's fine, but what about a better service for customers? We all know that it's almost impossible even now to get hold of an officer when you want to. You can't phone them. Recently it took me 9 weeks and 3 reminders to just get a response from somebody. I mean, so when you're a member of the public, how on earth are you supposed to do that? To say, as in the customer service strategy, that you'll be able to book a meeting next Tuesday between 2 and 4 in the library in Portishead or something, if that's our aspiration, that's just appalling. It really is bad at the moment when a councillor can't get hold of a member of staff, even the courtesy of a response. How do you think members of the public feel? To say you have to go online, well, we know how unstable our website is. It's almost impossible to get to where you want to get to. It is very poor, and I know they've been trying to change it and upgrade it for years, but it hasn't worked. We know what the equipment's like. I mean, mine hasn't worked, as I've shown you. It freezes, it types backwards, it goes black and blacks out. So you can't rely on technology. And now we're offering even worse service at a time when more people will probably be contacting the council for help for various things. And we're reducing the offer. I know nothing I can say will change the decision. The decision was made probably before the report was written, which is why it comes out as it does. But I don't want this report and the so-called facts in it to be what defines the future role and the future service we actually intend to provide people. I know it's covered in the customer services strategy, but that's not tied into this necessarily, and we could end up getting rid of Castlewood and we still haven't got adequate services replacing it. And that's what concerns me. I understand you will take the decision that it goes, but just because everything has to come back to Western doesn't mean that you can now again ignore the North as we did. One of the reasons, again, that we actually bought Castlewood in the first place was that many years ago we used to go around to all the outlying offices, and there are quite a few in the North when they hastily set up from the demise of Avon. And I used to go around with the then Chief Executive, Graham Turner, and we went around to all the outlying offices, and there were amazing how many there were, and talked to the staff, and Graham would give a slide on what the council was doing and how the various departments were performing. And there was very little reaction from some of the staff in those outlying offices, because they said quite bluntly, we don't feel that we're part of the council anyway. We have no contact with other departments, we don't know what everybody does, so we don't feel part of it. And the great benefit of Castlewood was putting our own teams together, but also partners with the police, the health, public health as it was then, and it made a great deal of difference that you could actually talking about the same topic. You could have all the services working together in that room, not having to make appointments to meet people. So be careful what you wish for in this working from home business. There will be a reduction. I know things won't go back to what they were pre-COVID, but they certainly can't go on being what they were during COVID. And one of the fastest growing sectors of the employment agencies is jobs anywhere. If you're telling me that your job can be done anywhere and you can do it just from home, well then you can do it from Cornwall or you can do it from Portugal. And before you laugh or whatever, many years ago a lot of jobs were transferred to Asia and places like that in the banking system, and we've all got used to that now. And that will happen again, because some companies are saying, I employed you to work from the office, I want the camaraderie, I want the team spirit, I want cross-fertilization of ideas. If you say you want to permanently work from home, that's fine, go and get another job. I'll employ someone who wants to come into the office. So there will be a backlash. It won't go back to what it was, but nor can it possibly be what it is at the moment. And we have certainly got to improve our service to both councillors and to the members of the public. It's just not working at the moment. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Ashton. Councillor Richardson, I believe.
Thank you, Chairperson. I'd just like to say that whatever we do here, we need to make sure we consult with the people in the north of the district and particularly in Clevedon. And I'd like to reiterate that we do need to have face-to-face capability in place before we move out of Castlewood. That was part of the customer service strategy, but it's got to be tied in so that happens before and not after. And I would say this night, we need to ensure that we have full scrutiny of the preferred options before they go anywhere. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Richardson. Councillor Charles?
I'm going to vote against this, and it really saddens me to do so. Not because of what it contains, which I almost wholeheartedly agree with, but what it omits. And I find myself agreeing a lot with Councillor Ashton. The North is ignored. Portishead, in particular, which I represent, is ignored and feels isolated. And what I feel with this, no matter what the statistics say, no matter what they would reiterate, it is a missed opportunity. The customer service strategy is great. It will give some presence. But what I want to see is that innovation. I believe this council will receive an offer next week from Portishead Town Council to have facilities at their disposal for council staff in their offices. What about the use of doctors' surgeries? There is a community hub on Portishead High Street that could be used. I have residents time and time again that say that this council does not think of their town and ignores their town. I will vote against this, not because I don't think it's a good idea, it probably is, but the customer service strategy alone does not give comfort, I think, to my town and what my town feels about the service it gets from North Somerset. We need to be more innovative, and if I saw that within this paper, I would wholeheartedly see it, and I would wholeheartedly support it. I don't see it in this.
Thank you, Councillor Charles. Councillor Shopland, please.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Castlewood was created to communicate with North Somerset. There was really no other reason for it to be created. Offices were closed throughout the north of the district, and this became a central hub. It's never been worked properly. No one has ever made any effort to make it fulfill its potential. It's just been treated as something on the side. We talk about a rainbow alliance. I will tell you this, in many parts of North Somerset it's got rather dim. Clevedon, for instance, feels that it really has no meaningful say in its future by the way it's been treated in the past 12 months. I'm not going into all the details tonight, it doesn't matter. This decision is premature, as has been said by better men than me tonight. There has to be a lot of thought given to how it will be replaced, how we are going to work in liaison with North Somerset, which is not done, how the people can communicate with North Somerset. I have a query, for instance, on my rates. I am now in, I think, the 3rd hour of telephone calls trying to contact someone who's got brains enough to answer my query, and I'm supposed to be a councillor. What do the public think? It's appalling, this council, its relationship with the public. You sit here and congratulate yourselves, and you pass motions, and you think you're wonderful. The public don't think so. The public have a very poor view of this council outside. That frightens me, because I'm a councillor, and I have to put my head on the block in a 12 months' time. But it's going to be difficult, believe you me, and there will be some changes. But I think it's premature. I think it should be deferred, and the alternative proposals brought forward is how we are going to deal with the north of the district, which was the point of Castlewood anyway. I would also ask that you sent out a paper telling the Clevedon Town Council and the people you were going to consult with them on the sites owned by the District Council and their future. And here tonight you're asking me to vote to commit it to the future. I ask that there is meaningful, there hasn't been for a long time, meaningful consultation with Clevedon Town Council so that their views can come forward. I will frighten my fellow members tonight from Clevedon, because it might be thought that Clevedon Town Council will buy Castlewood. I don't know what with, but we won't worry about that tonight. But no, Madam Chairman, it's premature. I would ask that Clevedon be kept fully informed and consulted in its long-term future, not whether you close the office, in the site's long-term future. It is a very important site to Clevedon. I've known it as long as anybody's known it in this chamber, and it's always been a commercial site bringing revenue to the town before Castlewood. Hales Cake Factory, Weeger's Ladder Factory, I can name them all. But, and I would also ask, and this is something that is unusual, that Councillor Shopland of East Ward Clevedon be kept in touch and informed with what's going on. Because since being chairman of this council, I've been shunted to the sidelines. It's impossible to get a posting on any audit committee. It's impossible to do anything. That's fair enough. If you don't want me, God help you. But seriously for a minute, premature, work its future out, come back to us with good propositions, and no doubt we'll support you.
Thank you, Councillor Shopland. Councillor Clayton, please.
Thank you, Chairperson. I'm not going to sit here and fight for reasons why, you know, Castlewood should be sold or not. My colleagues that are representing the North have done that eloquently. I suppose the one good thing in relation to selling Castlewood is that it might fill up the town hall a bit. Otherwise, we might as well sell the town hall as well. Which brings me on to my point, which I am in agreement with Councillor Ashton and Councillor Shopland, is that it is impossible to get hold of officers nowadays by telephone. Me and Councillor Parker had a situation with a constituent where we needed an officer down on site quick, and it took us, what, 5 or 6 people to be able to get, you know, contacting 5 or 6 people to try and get a response. Fridays, forget it. You've got no chance of getting hold of anyone because no officers are going to come into an office and work on a Friday. So I think, I completely accept that, working from home is a new way of working moving forward, but we've got to make sure it's balanced correctly. We can't have officers just choosing to work from home Monday to Friday. that's why they've got managers in place. You know, they should have managers that are looking at the structure of offices and, you know, saying, well, okay, yeah, you know, you work at home these days, you come into the office, because Councillor Ashton's right. You're going to have to be careful what you wish for. And it won't be long until we're selling this place that we're all sat in now. So, you know, I urge the powers that be, obviously the executive, that they seriously look at this working from home and get a right balance with it. Because, you know, Councillor Ashton and Councillor Shopland are right, you know. We are now, as councillors, experiencing what the public have always experienced about getting hold of officers. You know, we can't get hold of them, and we're councillors, so, you know, what chance do the people of North Somerset have?
Thank you, Councillor Clayton. I believe Councillor Codling is next.
Thank you, Chairperson. And I do agree with many of the points raised. I think there is a timing issue here. I think there's also an issue of breadth with this report. There's no doubt, surely, you know, that we know and accept what the risks are, what the drivers are for putting these proposals. But the assets that we hold as the local authority aren't just bricks and mortar. They're the vehicles for which we should be serving our residents. So it was disappointing to note that I think it was only 3 sub-paragraphs reference in the main report, reference customer access. And this is a perfect demonstration, actually, of what I spoke about earlier tonight. And I would urge absolute caution when we look at those statistics about appointments pre-pandemic. When we go to whether you call it digital by default, digital first, again, we understand the drivers, and that is the preference of many people. But I was at an equality stakeholder engagement group run by North Somerset Council recently, who referred to statistics of those using the online services. Did you have any trouble? Is it easy to use? Whatever it was, 98% gave them a glowing report. Well, they would, wouldn't they? Because they were responding to an online consultation, so you're asking people who are already on board the ship. So again, we're not getting the true data, the true experience for those who aren't being able to access it. And it's not just stats, it's not just being talked about in groups. I had the wife of somebody very vulnerable on the phone just last week who wasn't able to get anywhere near accessing the services they so need. So this is an opportunity. This must be considered at the same time as we consider the use of our physical assets and how we deliver our services.
Thank you very much, Councillor Codling. I believe Councillor Westwood is next.
Thank you, Chairperson. I must be living in a parallel Clevedon and parallel, or experienced in a parallel Clevedon Town Council. From what's been said, because for at least a year now, members of Clevedon Town Council, via one of the committees, have been working together with North Somerset Council to produce a community hub within Clevedon. To produce a community hub within Clevedon where Town Council staff, other organisations and North Somerset will share space within Clevedon, a lot closer to Clevedon town centre than Castlewood is. So, sorry to disagree with my colleague, but Clevedon Town Council has been consulted and has been very active in working on producing a community hub. And that is the fact of it. I don't want to be a Pollyanna, but as the leader of the council has said, you know, this is really rather a good idea that we're looking at here as far as what we do with Castlewood goes. And I shall leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Westwood. Councillor Shopland.
Respectfully, no.
Sorry, I already called you. Sorry, I didn't cross you off my list, sorry. Councillor Cartman.
Thank you, Chairperson. I think just to, this issue, I think, after tonight is going to be reallocated, I believe, into my portfolio. So I want to reassure people I'm very keen on the consultation, following the comments by Councillor Richardson behind me, and I think Councillor Codling earlier as well, that whatever the outcome tonight, we'll continue to consult widely on it. I think the comments by Councillor Ashton are correct. We need to make sure we don't conflate this with the customer service strategy. And I would agree there are definitely issues there. I know Councillor Willis raised some points earlier this year, and we've tried to respond to those, and you've seen that in the customer services strategy that came out a couple of weeks ago. I appreciate it doesn't go as far as what people would want, but I hear that, and I want to make them go further, I think is what I'd like to do, and make those improvements. I know there are issues at the moment. The council tax rebate that the government have kindly given us is clogging up our phone lines. So whether that's a temporary issue, or it should hopefully be a temporary issue we can work through, I'm not saying that to obfuscate the fact there are other issues we need to work on, just to explain why at the moment you may be having some issues. I do struggle with what Councillor Charles says. He says it's a good idea, but he's going to vote against it. Now, that doesn't make any sense to me, because if you have issues with customer service, which I understand, one of the main issues is we don't have the funds to make the improvements we want to. I know because I've looked at this and it's costly to redo the website from the ground up. I know because I was pushing it through the MTFP process last year, but well, we're not going to go into the constraints on councils. It's difficult, right? Just to say that. If we make an action like this, we can save £1.1 million a year. Now, I'm not saying where that will go, but that's a lot of money. And I think residents care more about the quality of the service they receive than where it's delivered from. And that's why I think this is a good move. In terms of the consultation, there was an all-member briefing, Councillor Shopland, on the 17th of January that I'm sure you were invited to. I am sure Clevedon Town Council were aware of the consultation. My clerk at Long Ashton tells me about the consultations that happen from North Somerset Council, and we are encouraged to comment on them. So I do not accept that Clevedon Town Council were not aware of this, or in fact that you were not aware of this, and I find that disingenuous at least to suggest that. I think there is issues in terms of the working from home for council staff. I appreciate this, and I have asked questions about this because the HR notionally falls within my remit, and all roles at the council now are going through an appraisal system in terms of what that is considered appropriate for that role to be. And in that designation are considerations, top considerations about what's important for the client or the customer, as well as what's important for helping us recruit staff. We know it's hard to recruit officers in certain areas, and if we can make it really attractive for them and also maintain quality, getting that balance right is important, and it's a really important balance. I'm not saying we're there yet, but we are working through that at pace to work out what we need to do. There's also an acceptance that working from home presents new challenges for performance management and issues, and they are being worked through as well. Finally, I think just to finish off, I am hearing that members are concerned about contacting officers, and I met with Simone Woolley last week, or it might have been earlier this week even, to talk about that. I'd hope to come back to all members shortly to try and gather some ideas about what we can do to improve that situation, and I know it is being discussed by the CLT as well, so that is on the issue. I know it's not related to this, but I did want to point that out. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cartman. Councillor Bryant, please.
I don't wish to repeat a whole load of information we've received from fellow members here, but one of the things I'm always been very, very aware of, you must keep a work staff happy. Having been an employer for many years in my life, that is fundamental in getting the best from them. Now, I'm aware that 80% of local authorities in the country wish to, at this moment in time, wish to adopt working from home, or as it's officially called, flexible and agile working, which there's no rules or regulations, which not only has been mentioned you could work from anywhere in the world, but any time of the day. And we're aware, because it's been said, that 88% of our staff would like to work from home. That's fine. But taking all our employees into consideration, there are a lot of people, and in fact, I can think of around about 160 of them off the top of my head, who are North Somerset environmental company, which collect our waste. And I'm sure 88% of them would like to work from home. And we all know that's completely impractical. Now, what we need to take on board, leader and executive members, is that those people should have an enhanced payment because they won't be able to take working from home. And I wish you'd take that on board. So if we go ahead with Castlewood, remember that's an extra expense. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bryant. I believe Councillor Lee Morgan is next on my list.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. But, we still call it Leigh Morgan, not Lee. Right, my memory goes back well over 50 years when, before Woodspring District Council was formed, and this area became part of it, when we all thought in Weston that despite the fact that we were the largest town in the county, we were secondary in anything that matters to Taunton. And I suppose that's inevitable. Wherever North Somerset Council operates from, there will be areas that feel that they're being overlooked or not being dealt with swiftly or efficiently or whatever. I mean, go into the town hall now, as I have done a few times over the past couple of months or more. It's like a ghost town. Yeah? The IT department, 2 or 3 of them, are about the only people that I can find up on the 3rd floor. And I just don't see how people can work efficiently at home without the contact with their colleagues. I take a daily newspaper, national paper, and one of the things, or first things I turn to is the letters page. And day after day, the civil service doesn't appear to be working like it used to. The passport offices, people are waiting months to have their passport renewed. To get their driving license, they're waiting months and months and months, 6 months, 9 months sometimes, to have their passport, their driving license renewed. And to my mind, I think working from home largely doesn't work. I really don't think it does. There are too many distractions at home, particularly if you've got young children and the phone going for non-work matters and so on. I just wonder if the unions have been consulted and what the result of that consultation amounted to. But another thing with working outside the house is the social activities which emanate from them. How many of us here met our wives, husbands, partners, whatever you want to call them, at work? I certainly did. I think that people's lives are diminished by the fact that they're not having the social interaction that a workplace gives you. And that is just going to get worse and worse and worse. People are going to become more and more isolated, I believe. So, as I say, I don't know which way to jump. I can see both sides of the argument, but those are some of the negative points which I find quite persuasive. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lee Morgan. I believe Amy would like to say something at this point, so please.
Thank you. Yes, I just thought it might be helpful to come in as I'm a sponsor for the Accommodation Strategy Programme. So obviously the Council signed off its strategy in, I think it was February last year, which had one of the objectives, which was to capture some of the positive benefits which had come out of the pandemic to allow staff to work from home where their role made that possible. So just to clarify, there is an accommodation strategy PCOM panel that meets currently every 2 months, and they consider the work that's going on. So some of, I guess, the people services policies that you're referring to, including, for example, the designation of work styles, which is obviously based around needs of the business and the council and the customers, rather than necessarily personal preference. So it'd be really great to see any members that want to engage. It's always an open invite from Councillor Richardson to come along to that panel and obviously get feedback and updates on the work that's going on. But also sounds like we need to give some more communication activity out to all members. So I'm happy to take a commitment away from that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Petty, I believe, is next.
Thank you. I'm supportive of this paper, and if passed, I can see this as a development project for the council. This is, after that decision is made, it is what happens next to that space and to that location. And I think identifying the priorities and principles of that and the expectations on that is a really important task. I would like to appeal to John Croxall-Hawley, and I apologise for not approaching him in advance. I would like to ask whether the Place Policy Panel might facilitate a task group on this pre-application stage. It's called pre-planning engagement in the coming months around identifying the priorities and principles of this development site. There is an open consultation until the end of June, until the 20th of June. That is your opportunity to ask your residents, those in Portishead, those in Tickenham, those in Clevedon, what do you value in that site now? And how are you using it now? And what could you see it being used for in the future? The consultation is open. Comment, ask people to comment, because it could be there is office space and there is some affordable housing. It could be there are more EV chargers and there's some sheltered accommodation, but that's what a consultation is there for. And so I wouldn't want anybody to be predetermining it before the consultation closes. But then this report proposes a number of options, and I would like further policy development and scrutiny through a group, and I think that Place might be the best location for it, to have the opportunity for a task group to contribute to those priorities and principles so that the end result for this development site is something that suits the needs of our communities. Would others feel that that was something that we could support? And if it can't be there, could we consider somewhere else?
Chair, could I move that we take the vote? We're going around in circles a bit, and lots of points that aren't related to the report are being raised, and I really feel that we've had a good debate and we should just take the vote.
I'd like to sum up briefly before we do that, though.
Could I answer the question which was asked of me?
Well, I'm sure the solicitor's going to point out that I have moved that we take the vote, so that's what we should do next, isn't it, rather than have lots of random other things.
I'll bow to my leader's desire.
Okay. Can I ask the solicitor to clarify this for us?
So, Chairman, as before, the mover of the motion, the leader, should sum up, and then you should put to the council chamber whether you move to the vote.
Can you sum up, please?
Yeah, I think the point that was made, to be perfectly frank, colleagues, only Councillor Petty has, I think, substantively addressed what this report is about. So if I can briefly sum up, as I said in my opening remarks, I think on matters of HR, we should defer to what the head of paid service feels is best for our staff. I'm not saying that's different to access to officers is completely different. In terms of ways of working, we might have a view as residents, as members of the public, as councillors, but I think it's, the head of paid service has a pretty good idea in terms of performance management, whether or not the staff, whether it's working out for them. Now, I also understand completely why it's been so difficult for members to decouple a decision to be made on Castlewood as a council asset from customer service. I totally get that, and I do hear what everyone is saying on that. Councillor Cartman addressed a lot of that in his response. We had a good debate at Executive last month when Councillor Cartman presented the customer services strategy. We really do need to follow through on that, and I would invite all those, all members to really truthfully engage in the scrutiny process around, to ensure that we do follow through on what we suggested. I think Ash, you sent an email to all councillors yesterday, didn't you? About the pilot and what we the intent, and again we need to follow through on that. But hopefully all members read the email from Ash. In terms of the Castlewood as an asset, I actually frankly see this as a natural next step from all the accommodation strategy work that goes back to I think 2004-2005, where periodically the council looks at the assets it has on as part of its estate, and it's only right that we make a thorough evidence assessment of whether we need those assets or not. So I hear what people are saying about access to Castlewood, but I think there's also a sense of sunk cost fallacy here, where the obvious decision is right in front of you, but you go against all the evidence because of the sort of bias for sort of the status quo. And I think those people who are saying they would vote against this, essentially saying they will be prepared for this council to spend over £1 million a year for an asset that we no longer need for our staff. It's as simple as that. Okay? Now, what happens next on this site is for this council to decide. And I hear what people are saying too about consultation with in particular Clevedon. There's a consultation out at the moment on development sites. Castlewood is part of that consultation. We've already had some responses actually about what people would want to see happening on that site. And I know there are criticisms partly justifiably on how we consult and so on. But that consultation is open until the 20th of June, I think. There's a fairly big window for people to input into that consultation. There are all sorts of engagement around placemaking in Clevedon for members and the members of the public and other stakeholders in Clevedon to get their points across. But I think fundamentally this is a paper about, are we happy for the council to carry this forward as a burden on our revenue budget of over £1 million, or do we want to be creative with that site, as Councillor Petty was suggesting? We have a decision later in the year before us where we can actually make a decision along those lines, And it's as simple as that, really. So I take on board what everyone is saying, but I would like to move the recommendations and look for a seconder. I think I've got a seconder, yeah. So suggest we move to a vote,
did that.
Chairperson.
So can we vote now on whether to end the debate and take a vote? So all those in favour to end the debate and take a vote? Anyone against? Any abstentions? We end the debate and take a vote. So can we now proceed to the vote? All those in favour? All those against? Any abstentions?
Chairman, the motion's carried.
Thank you.
You've been beaten to it by another member in the chamber, and I will be looking at that.
Well, this has only been an executive meeting with the rest of us in attendance, hasn't it?
Could Councillor Davis's remark be shared with the rest of us, please?
Yes, excellent. So there's no urgent business. I declare this meeting closed.
Thank you, Chairperson.